We will now begin the full year 2017-2018 budget workshop. Tonight's meeting has begun at 5:05 p.m. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Graham.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pat. Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Romulus.
Present.
Mr. Casella.
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. For the commissions, I got two different agendas. We'd like to do public comments after the budget overview so that we can hear the budget overview first and then hear from the public. Is that okay?
That's fine.
It'll be fine.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's begin with the budget overview.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I'm pleased to present to you this year your proposed 2017-2018 operating and capital improvements budget. Our fiscal year for the public begins October 1 of each year and ends September 30. So this budget cycle will cover October 1 of 2017 through September 30 of 2018. We are going to take a look at both our operating and our capital budgets today. And ultimately, I'll save that for Tim. I'll jump into your slides.
Lori, excuse me, when you're turning your head, your voice.
Is it fading? Sorry, this microphone isn't working as good. We are going to obviously provide an opportunity for public comment. That's what these workshops are for, and I'm delighted to see this room almost full. And it isn't all employees, it's the public. So thank you for coming and taking the time, because we do value and need your input. We do 2 to 3 days of workshops, typically this time of year, prior to the actual adoption process that we'll talk about in a couple minutes, and that takes place in September. Before we're over here in these next couple days, we will be approving a tentative millage rate, and we will be discussing a preliminary fire assessment rate. Before I turn it over to Tim, in a nutshell, I'm proposing in the budget to maintain our millage rate at 7.900 mils. There is a recommendation for an increase in our fire assessment from $100 a year on residential to $120 a year on residential. Our industrial commercial properties are based on square footage increments. This equates to $1 and change a month per household to generate some revenue for us that you'll learn as we move through the process why we need it and what it would be for. We are also proposing a $1 increase in our garbage rates. We currently sit at $16 a month for residential garbage collection. We are proposing a $1 increase per month for that, which will generate a little over $460,000 for our budget. So those are the big items that I'm sure will dominate most of our discussion. I think from there, let our Finance Director, Assistant City Manager Tim Howard, take us through an overview through a PowerPoint. And I believe there's copies in the back for everybody on the PowerPoint.
Yes. There should be copies in the back for the agenda and also the PowerPoint presentation. So this is very similar to last year's format. What will happen is the next 3 days we do our public workshops for the proposed budget, July 17th through the 19th. Then your first public hearing on your budget for next year is Thursday, September 7th at 6:30, which is a commission meeting. Based on the proposed budget that's in front of you, the Thursday, September 7th at 6:30 is also the final fire assessment rate resolution approval. And then the second public hearing that's required by statute will be Tuesday, September 19th, which is your second meeting in September. So, like Lori said, this will be an overview of...
Pull your mic closer.
Closer? Okay. Will be an overview of all your budgets. So the first slide is a pie chart showing that all funds that you'd be budgeting for next year total $202 million. Of that, the four major funds are general fund coming in at $83.3 million. Water and sewer utility fund is $46.5. Capital funds total $33.4, which is general and government surtax plus utility. Solid waste is 11 million. Along the side of the pie chart, you can see the smaller ones, debt service at 9.5, fleet, golf course, self-insurance, and then the smaller funds. To fund that overall budget of $202 million, there's a variety of revenue sources. The proposed funding sources, the four major ones are utility fees, which come in at $46 million. Property taxes come in at $34 million. Capital and bond sources at $33.4. Transfers between funds at $15.3. And again, on the side, you can see a breakdown of some of the smaller ones. Public service tax, 9.5. Intergovernmental, which is funds that come in from the state of Florida, Palm Beach County, other government units. Charges for services, $6.9 million. Special assessment, which is the fire assessment, $6.5 million. Franchise taxes, license and permits, and all others. Moving on to the general fund specifically, the total proposed budget's $83.3 million. That's $3.9 million or 4.9% over your adopted fiscal year 16-17 budget, which is what you adopted and talked about last year at this time. This pie chart shows you that the personnel services, which included salary, wages, health benefits, pension, total $64 million of that, 83, or 77% of the general fund budget. This pie chart's broken between, whoops, sorry about that. Personnel services, pension contribution, operating expenses, capital outlay costs that we fund in the general fund, and then non-operating. This pie chart just is a different format and a breakdown of that same $83 million, but based on services, types of services or departments, depending on which one you're looking at. So you've got police at $30 million, which is 36.6, fire 23.5, public works 7, all the way down to library 2.3, ITS 2.4, finance 1.3, human resources 0.8. And it's just the pie chart breaking it that way. This slide will give you the major changes and expenses that we're realizing in the proposed budget that we've submitted. So what this says is the current year proposed budget's at $83.3 million. What the original adopted budget for the current year was $79.4. This just shows the 3.9 increase that I mentioned prior on the other slide, which is the increase over the initially adopted 16-17 year budget. I have a note here that during the year we did a budget amendment concerning the Town Square project phase 1, which is 4.3. So currently we sit at an amended budget of the current year of 83.6. Below here are major expenditures that we've experienced increases in that's included in the proposed budget. First three line items have to concern with the city contribution to the individual pension funds, the police, fire, and general employees. What this shows is that the police pension, the city contribution has increased $563,000. The fire pensions increased $1.1 million. General employees increased $217,000 for the general fund. In previous years, the last year, couple years, we've negotiated union contracts with the police and fire. Both of those contracts have a step plan that's in the contract that we need to provide funds for in the upcoming year. That totals roughly $750,000 that's attributable to those step plans. Last year when we did the budget workshops, we added 6 additional firefighters, and we funded those firefighters for 50% of the year this year, which was $225,000. This upcoming year, the full cost of those is $450,000. So that's an increase in expenditure of $225,000 for those 6 firefighters.
Tim, excuse me, I'm going to stop you.
Certainly.
Last year, we funded those, but we had a grant. Did anybody apply for a grant this year?
The grant that you're referencing, I believe, is the SAFER grant that we had a couple years ago. It provided funding for 7 or 8 officers for 2 or 3 years, our firefighters. That program is not in effect anymore. There's another grant that we're applying for equipment.
Thank you.
The next line is increases in what we call the self-insurance and the vehicle maintenance allocations. Those are two internal service funds that the city operates. One is for what we call self-insurance. It's our reinsurance premiums and our workers' comp and liability claims. The other one is vehicle maintenance, or our garage that maintains our vehicles and provides mechanics. We collect those costs in one fund and we allocate those out to departments based on historical expenses. So this year we've seen an additional cost of that of $322,000. In the proposed budget, we have a few positions that we're recommending to be funded, and some reclass of positions. That accounts for about $510,000, and what I've done is just listed a few of the additional positions that we're recommending. In the city manager's office, we're recommending to move a position that's currently in there to economic development to assist in those endeavors, and replacing that with an admin assistant in the city manager's office. Development department and engineering department, they currently have a part-time position that's doing some administrative work, record specialist, and we're recommending to move that into a full-time position and share it between those two divisions. Parks and grounds, we're recommending 2 grounds maintenance workers at a cost of $80,000 for the 2 of them, and that's a program that is a new initiative that will be discussed later by Jeff Livergood and Lori. Information technology and community standards, there's a new position in each one of those divisions. Those are specifically to work with utility issues that we have. The information tech, the network administrator, will be dedicated to the software enhancements that we've done in the utility department in the last few years. Community standards, we have some areas of code issues that relate to utility codes that we want to concentrate on. Those will ultimately be funded by a transfer in from the utility department, but they're new to the head count into general fund. Recreation, we're requesting an additional ocean lifeguard and additional part-time slots for the pool lifeguards. So when you total those, expansion of the pool hours that we've done this year, that's to continue that into next year. So when you total that, that just gives you a rough estimate of $3.7 million of expenses, which are part of that 3.9.
I need to ask questions on the city manager, administrative assistant, commission A, new. Who was presently doing that job in the city manager's office?
John Durgan is a special projects coordinator. So we would like to move John into economic development to work with David Scott, provide him some support for our Building Wealth in the Community program, our strategic planning, and so forth. And I would like to replace that with a lower graded position as an administrative assistant, basically to assist with phones, and then also to serve as more of a commission aide. I've had requests from a couple commissioners to have a little bit more assistance in managing their schedules and their phones and their emails and so forth. So it's a lower paid position than where John sits now, and I think he could be better utilized and be a great support to our economic development initiative.
Okay, just want to know where he's going. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next slide is we wanted to just highlight some initiatives that we're including and recommending in the proposed budget that may or may not have been on the previous slide. So one of the things we've got in the proposed budget is $500,000 that we've identified for funding of raises with the union contracts that we have open, which are the blue and the white collar SEIU, and then general, which is non-represented employees. An HSA contribution for all employees except for the PBA, totaling $454,000, which we currently do, and that's just to continue it. An insurance stipend for family coverage is an issue that the city has struggled with over the years. The way our present setup is, anyone that carries family coverage pays the complete amount for the premium for that family coverage, and we wanted to try to start providing a stipend towards that to help those employees. We're looking at trying to put back in some funds for tuition reimbursement for the blue and white and general employees. We had it in previous years. It was cut out a number of years ago. We'd like to try to get that back. The next two, the volunteer recognition program and the employee recognition program, these are programs that we've talked about as staff. I think we've talked and listened to the commission that, you know, we want to do something to recognize our employees. We want to promote our employees and thank them and the volunteers for all the hard work they do. So this is an amount that we have in the budget to where we can look at and see what we can do. The residential improvement program is under economic development. We've developed a program that we hope and we are confident will be a great assistance with some of the residents that have code issues, and this is a whole plan that will come to you, and we provided $40,000 for the initial funding for that.
Tim, would that be citywide?
That would be citywide based on a code case or a code issue. So example, if someone is being cited for poor fascia boards or something, depending on income, we have a couple levels. One can be a total grant, it can be a 50-50, or it can be a loan up to X amount of dollars to help with those, to get those back in shape, to give them some assistance and some avenue to get the issues under control.
So available citywide with a code infraction?
Right.
Yeah, it has to come through as a referral from the community standards.
The TLC crew was on the previous slide, which was the two grounds maintenance. That's a program, again, that Jeff will touch base a little bit later on, and Lori, and expand on that for you. We have in actually the commission budget a recommendation to join the National League of Cities this year, and that's a tune of $5,500. So those are just some initiatives that we have in the budget, that's in the proposed budget, that we just wanted to bring to your attention going through this presentation.
Before you leave that slide, let's go back to volunteer recognition program. I'm glad that you all are putting this back in there. When we had recognition for the volunteers, when we did it at Benvenuto's, we didn't have too much problems filling slots when we had our boards. Employee recognition, this is a good program for the city of Boynton because the morale for our employees here is at an all-time low. Thank you.
All right, so now the next two slides are the individual departments that are in the general fund, and it's a basic chart that shows what was adopted this year, what's in the proposed budget, the dollar amount of the change, and the percentage. And it's listed by department, the details in your book, and in the proposed budget that was published online. So we just start with City Commission, go down through City Manager, City Hall General Administration decreased, City Clerk decreased. There's no election next year, so that's why that one has went down. Finance went up $100,000. IT went up $207,000. That includes that additional network administrator that we spoke about on previous pages. The police have 3 divisions, so it's uniform services, admin, and support. Fire. And remember, these include the pension increases also, so the amount of the change includes have already taken that into account. Community standards, emergency management. This just comes up and it totals the proposed budget of the 83.3. This last line I added just for informational purposes for everyone to understand that the initial department budgets that came into Lori as requested for next year actually totaled $86.8 million, or a $7.4 million increase over the current year adopted budget. So that's where Lori started with, and the staff started with, and has reduced that down to the 83.3 or the 3.9. That's just for informational for you guys.
Tim, can you go back and explain the decrease in city attorney?
So city attorney, the decrease in that would be for,
Want me to cover that?
please.
I could cover that. Is this working? No?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so a couple of reasons for that. One is that Commissioner Casello challenged me to go through my budget specifically about mid-year and try to find some places to accomplish some savings.
Jim, talking to Mike, don't be afraid. They want
The
to
true real reasons for it are that the assistant city attorneys that are doing a lot of the work that you see and meet and talk to from time to time have developed with an additional year of practice additional levels of efficiency. So we've been able to adjust some hours associated with that. The other part of it is that Lori has hired and has advanced a number of people in the organization that are a lot more experienced than we've dealt with in the past. So there's been a savings associated with staff members picking up some of the cost of things that we would take a look at on their behalf. So that's the savings right there.
Thank you.
Tim, I have a question on the police uniform services, administrative services, and support services. That's a total of 14% increase, or is that
For the,
individual budgets?
those are, the percentages are individual over the previous year. So if you look at the three of them, and I'm going to do this in my head, so it could be off a little bit, you're probably looking at a $1.3 million increase, $1.4 million increase.
For the police department?
So it's probably a 14%. Yeah.
Schoolhouse Museum services. I know that this is supposed to be a self-sustaining entity of the city, and I see that we have reduced it down to $254,000. I'm just saying, why is the reduction? I'm just saying, explain it to me.
So the Schoolhouse Museum is, current year adopted budget was $269, the proposed is $254. So it's a reduction of $14,000. So you're absolutely right. That was a intentional decrease because we provided a level of support for their staffing at $250,000 a couple years ago. We reduced it to $215,000, and we're recommending to reduce that to $205,000 this year to slowly wean that off. Because that was the intent. The intent was the city was going to provide support, and then they've been working very diligently to get other sources of revenue and grants, and Suzanne's done a wonderful job doing that. So we're able to reduce our support by that $14,000.
So when it comes back before us in the city, let me make sure I'm understanding this. We're not going to see a negative.
Right. No, it's just it's just less than the current year budget.
My take is, let me say it again, when she stand up before us, she always said that, I'm not doing so well. Just follow me. I'm just saying, so I'm just saying this is not going to have no impact on the services of the Schoolhouse Children Museum.
No.
This is the only thing that we have really like one of the bullets for the city.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right. No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Just want to let you know you reduced it. Okay. Let me ask another question. Why is that an increase in the recreation department of $173,000?
Hold on just a second.
Hold on, so I gotta pull my rec.
Is it more bodies or an increase? I'm just saying.
I think one of the things is we shifted some of the pool expenses that were paid out of a recreation fund. Some of the salaries that we were paying out of there, we've shifted over to here because we've
Can't support it.
changed that mechanism at the pool where we're not charging for under 12, so it's really not, there's no revenue coming in, so that some of the staffing's coming over to the general fund for that.
And Mayor and Commission too, just so you know, so we're going to have each of the departments, the larger departments, give you a brief presentation that'll answer a lot of those questions for you, mostly large police, fire, development, recreation and parks, and so forth. We're gonna move into that next, so that'll help you.
Yeah, that'll help because right now it's not coming to be clear.
Right, we got to get to that point on the agenda, and we'll have good presentations.
Go ahead.
So the next pie chart is the funding sources for the general fund of the 83.3. So like Lori said, we're recommending to leave the millage the same at 7.9. Property taxes are coming in at a net of $34 million. Fund transfers of 15.3. Intergovernmental, which is what I mentioned before, which was the funds coming in from the state or the Palm Beach County other governments. Charges for services, 6.9. The fire assessment is 6.5 million. Franchise taxes that we've received from Florida Power and Light. Licenses and permits, which would be your occupational license or your building permits, fines, interest, and rents, and then fund balance appropriation. And Lori alluded to this too, that this proposed budget does not recommend or require any appropriation of fund balance or reserve as has been done in the past. So this slide will show you the major increases that we're seeing on the revenue side. We saw it on the expense side. This is on the revenue side. So because we have been very fortunate with the increased values of our properties in the city, which has come in from the property appraiser at an average of about 8.25% across the city, we're realizing an increase in gross property taxes based on assessed values at the current 7.9 mils. The gross taxes would be 41.4. In concert with that, the increase also has come through for the properties within the CRA district. So the CRA portion of the property taxes that we will transmit to the CRA will increase from 6.6 to 7.3. So they'll recognize an additional $670,000. So what we call the net property taxes increased for the city from 31.6 to 34 million, or 2.4 million. Florida Power and Light, which is the franchise fee that we collect from them, based on current estimates and what they currently are remitting to us, we're going to see about a $200,000 reduction from the current year. Business taxes, we're looking at a $75,000 increase. Building permits, $250,000. Fire and police service contracts, those are the contracts that we have to provide police and fire services to surrounding cities. That includes any increase that are built into the contracts. Most of them have a 4% increase per year, and that increased $277,000. The fire assessment, which Lori alluded to, we're recommending an increase from $100 a year to $120, will generate $1,047,000 over this current year budget. ALS, which is the ambulance service and the billing associated with it, we're looking at a $500,000 increase from $2 million to $2.5 million. And if you remember, part of the discussion last year on the additional 6 firefighters was that with that station becoming fully staffed again, we would be able to do more of our medical runs and not outsource those. That staff is on board, I believe, right now. So by the time we get into next year, they'll be up and running as far as billing for ambulance services.
All
Yes,
right.
Commissioner.
No department head is going to come in and tell me why there's a reduction in FP&L. Explain to me why we're having a $200,000 drop.
Reduction in FP&L. The franchise fee is based on usage across the city for customers. The best I can tell you, it's based on the checks that I'm receiving from FP&L. I'm going to say that one of the avenues is we promote efficiency and energy efficiency, and one of the downfalls is if people do what we ask them to do, the cost of their electricity bills go down, which in turn reduces our franchise fee.
Okay. Thank you.
Tim,
Yep.
can you explain a little bit more to me about the ALS in terms of what that means exactly? So does that mean that we're getting funding for running our own calls?
You want to take it?
We're-
No?
Give him the mic.
Okay, so Glenn Joseph, Fire Chief. So because of the manpower shortage downtown, we were outsourcing some of our call volume exceeded our capacity. But by increasing an additional ambulance that's on its own, independent, we're able to transport 100% of our patients. That would allow our billing department to collect more fees from the insurance companies, Medicaid, Medicare, and that's going to account for the increase you're seeing. In addition to that, we have added some part-time staff in the billing department, which allowed us to get our billing out quicker. Because sometimes, especially with auto accidents, the first come, first served rule applies. So as we were able to get our bills turned around in a shorter period of time, we're collecting more money from those agencies. So that's what we are.
Stay right there with the microphone. How are we doing with overdoses? I'm just saying, who do we collect fees from on that?
Well, overdoses, I have one of my slides here. So far this year, we have 305 overdoses where we've had to give some medication. And the billing on that is about 50%, sometimes less, depending on if we get the insurance information from the hospital, because generally the patients don't have any ID on them or any kind of insurance information on them. So we got to see when they're processed through the hospital. We have a partnership with the local hospitals to send us back that insurance information, and about 50% of the cases we're able to recover some funds from that. So far on our medication costs alone, it's at over $7,000 so far this year. So, and we anticipate to be about $15,000 just on medication, not the transport, not any of the other supplies, just for the medication.
Okay, let me ask it another way. For 305 transports, how much do we get paid for each transport?
Well, for
That's what I'm looking for. I need a figure.
our transport per transport cost is $680. But if there are Medicaid patients, that we were reimbursed at $190 from Medicaid, and the insurance companies will negotiate whether they're in there or not. Then we usually bill them at the maximum cost, but we still get something back, maybe less than what we're billing them for.
I think you're still missing it. Let me say it another way. Give me a figure. I'm just saying, for John Doe, whether we get Medicaid, any kind of aid, I'm just saying, for 305, what is the total that's costing the city before we try to go back and start getting money?
Okay, so
On just the overdose calls,
Yes.
Chief.
just the overdose calls.
Yes, that's what I...
Well, the calls that we're getting, it's ALS or BLS. They are billed on standard rate. So for each ALS call that we have to give medication on, we bill them $680 some. The cost of that call to the city is about $2,600 for manpower, equipment, and all that cost. So we're only recovering about $600 out of the $2,000 if they pay the bill.
6 times 3 is 20.
Out of 2,000 times 305, somebody hit a machine, tell me what we're looking at. That's what I'm trying to get a figure right there, because I didn't bring my calculator.
2,600 times 300. It's approximately $780,000.
About $780,000.
Is the
Thank
cost.
Cost.
Yeah, that's not
Total
the revenue.
cost.
That's what I need to hear.
That's total
Thank you.
cost to the city.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Chief, we accept credit cards?
Say again?
Does the department accept credit card payment?
Not at this time, not directly on the scene. When we send them the bill, they could pay with a credit card, but not on the scene. We don't ask for a credit card on the scene. We ask for insurance information, and then the billing department then reaches out to them after the fact.
Unlike the emergency one.
Chief, do you find that a majority or less than the majority of these calls receive no payment at all because of the types of individuals that are...
More than half.
Okay.
Because the study done by Delray Beach found that 95% of those people are not from this area. They're being imported from other parts of the country. So they don't pay local taxes, they don't own homes, they don't buy stuff because they're brought in for rehab. And so when we get them and we can't get insurance information, there's basically it costs our residents to cover that cost.
So, Chief, this ALS transport, you find it financially feasible to do? Or were we doing better when we had like AMR helping us on this?
Well, AMR was billing the patients to a tune of $470,000. Basically, we'd go to the scene, treat the patient, turn them over to AMR, and AMR bill for that transport. Because remember, we could only bill for transports. If we don't transport the patient, we can't bill the insurance company. So if AMR would get there, transport the patient, bill for the recovery, we wouldn't get anything for going out there and taking care of the patient. So I think it's better that we transport our patients. So at least we get a partial payment as opposed to no payment.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so that are the the major revenue sources. The items at the bottom have to do with transfers between funds. So the first one is public service tax debt. We're looking at an increase of $165,000. Part of that is due from the refinance that we did a couple years ago and the lower interest payment that we're having on those public service tax bonds for the upcoming year. Water and sewer is a transfer in from the utility operations. We're proposing that it be increased from 5.7 to 6.3, or $617,000. The transfers from solid waste, we're looking at it being decreased from 1.8 million to 1.5, or a reduction of 300,000. And the fund balance that's needed in the current year budget, we budgeted $1,006,726, and the current proposed budget does not have any fund balance appropriated in it.
Let me ask another question. Since we're talking about solid waste, why we decreasing solid waste $300,000 and want to ask the citizens to pay an extra dollar?
So the way the
rationale.
I'll answer it to the best of my ability, and then you may have additional questions for Jeff later. So the way solid waste is set up is very similar to utilities. The charges that we charge the citizens and the customers come into the fund. It's an enterprise fund. It pays for the expenses associated with that fund, and we do a transfer out of some portion of that revenue from those funds to the general fund. What we have done in recent years, especially back during the recession, was we transferred a large annual amount from solid waste, around $3 million for a couple of years, which took out a lot of the reserve that we had there. We've increased staff this past year. We've had expenses associated with vehicle repairs that are increasing from year to year. We've also reduced the pre-funding plan for equipment from 7 years to 5 years, which increases the annual cost for the set-aside to buy vehicles at the end of their life. So when you look on the sanitation side and you add the revenues coming in and all those expenses and then what's left, it just comes out to be that net of 1.5. If the increase in the rates are not something the commission wishes to consider, we would need to go back and look at that fund by itself and see what is available to transfer, which would be less of the 1.5. I'm just not sure exactly what that dollar amount would be.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
It's not okay, but it sounds all right for now.
Okay. The total of that comes to three.
Let me clarify on that. So if I understand correctly, basically what it simply means is that we're taking less out of that balance, correct? We're keeping more in that department, that way they have more of an operating budget in order to work with, and that way we can get garbage collected on time, correct?
Because last year you approved the additional staff and additional equipment for, I can't remember the number of staff. I want to say six?
3 new crews.
4.
3
new crews.
Just saw a hand.
So because of that, those are ongoing expenses from year to year.
Jeff had his hand up.
And one of my goals over the past couple of years was us to do exactly that, Commissioner Romulus, and rely less on transfers from our funds, because when we went through the recession, we are still recovering from that, where we went in and effectively decimated our capital improvements program to get our budget balanced. Also, in that term of laying off about 200 employees over several years. So I'm pleased to say we're relying less on that. You don't see any transfer coming from our fleet fund, because that fund needs to be laid off and allowed to get healthy again. We're doing the same with solid waste. And fortunately, I've been able to propose a budget that does not require any reserves this year. And that was the first time in a very long time.
You said that fund need to be laid off. You mean left alone?
Yes.
Left alone.
Yes.
Thank you. Don't lay off the fund. Okay.
Right. So those increases in the revenue side total about $3.8 million. And remember that the proposed budget is an increase of $3.9 million. So those are just the sources on the revenue side. This slide is information concerning your fund balance in the general fund over the last 10 years. So we're looking very good as far as the fund balance, and how this is set up is back in 2007, you can see that we had $18.9 million. The red line is the required emergency reserve that we have per policy and resolution that the commission has adopted. That policy states that we will set aside 10% of the fund balance, or 10% of the upcoming budget year for general fund as an emergency reserve. So back in 2007, it was 7.4. Based on the proposed budget that you have in front of you, which is $83 million, that reserve would become 8.3, which you can see at the on the other side of the chart. We ended last year, 9/30/2016, with a $16 million fund balance, which included the emergency reserve of 7.9. That dip that you see from 16 million to 13 million has to do with that mid-year budget amendment that we just did recently for the town square, where we set aside fund balance for Phase 1 contract. The goal and the hope is that those funds will not be used because we move into Phase 2. We will not use those. They'll revert back into the fund balance. So from 2007, when we were at 18.9 million, you can see we took a drop down to 8.4 in 2010. Over the past few years, we were slowly coming back up to that 16 million. Again, that town square budget amendment was an anomaly during the year. So we're getting back there to where I think is a good, healthy state. This slide has to do with the proposed tax millage that we're proposing, plus what we call the state rollback tax rate. So we're proposing a 7.9 mils, which is the same tax rate as last year. You can see our current year assessed values is 5.4 billion. The rollback rate is the millage that this commission would set to generate the same dollars that we received in property taxes from in the current year. So as your values go up, the rollback rate will be less than your current and existing tax rate. So in our case, what that does is if you were to set a rate at 7.4224, you would generate the same amount of tax dollars as what were received this year. If that were to happen, based on the proposed budget you have in front of you, when you follow this all the way down, you would end up with $2.2 million that you would either need to find in additional revenue sources or reduction in expenses that are in your proposed budget. That leads into this.
Before you lead into that, let me go ahead and say what I need to say. First of all, the tax rate you keep saying is that proposes at 7.9. This is
Correct.
what you all are proposing.
Correct.
But as elected officials, we can decrease anytime we get ready. I have not heard one of you all say that yet.
Correct. You can, correct.
Okay.
One of the actions that you will take during these 3 days of workshops is to adopt a proposed millage rate. You're absolutely right. We're proposing 7.9. What I will tell you that is each tenth of a mill generates approximately $400,000. So anything less than that, we can have that discussion at the end of how that plays out and what that would involve. But you're absolutely right. You can set it wherever the commission desires. So this slide is in context with the state of Florida statutes concerning property taxes. What will happen is we do an advertisement every year. The proposed ad valorem tax rate is 7.9 mils. There's no rate increase from the current 7.9 mils, but the actual tax increase will be advertised at 6.43% per the state trim calculations, which is over and based on the rollback rate of 7.4224. Just a note, again, citywide, the property values on an average increased 8.25%. That does not mean that every parcel in the city increased that amount. Some parcels will increase 12% or 13%. Some may increase 4% or 5%. The county gives you an average of your citywide based on your boundaries and the overall values. Again, note, the commission proposed millage rate with the question marks. This is where you set it in the July workshops.
And
That will turn into the county by the end of the month, which will appear on the proposed tax, the trim notices.
Does the property appraiser inform us what amount is homestead exemption?
They do it in a list of what, yeah, they give you a number of values. Assessed, taxable, what's homestead based on different types of homestead, what's agricultural, and then it comes down to the total amount of value, which is where they figure out the 8.25%.
So the 8.25 includes the homestead exemption?
Yes.
So that, okay.
So this slide is one that we've had in here for the last few years. And what this slide is depicting is that there are some properties in the city that pays less than $200 in ad valorem taxes. This came up when we had the recession, and there was a question to staff as far as how many properties were paying smaller amount of ad valorem taxes. So what you can see here is that in 2013, we do it by percentage and number of parcels. So we were at 25.9%. We're now down to 19.9%. 7,800 parcels down to 6,100 parcels. A lot of this are properties that were bought a number of years ago and homesteaded and hung on to and lived in for a number of years. One of the ways that this number changes and goes down is that those properties are put on the market, sold, and at this point of resale can be reassessed as far as the taxable value that's current. And that usually pulls them out of that lower ad valorem tax amount that they're paying. So as you can see, the percent's going down over time, and the number of parcels is going down, which means that more, like I said, are being assessed at a more accurate market value.
So Tim, there's 6,000 properties paying less than $200, or $200 and less?
6,100, right?
6,100.
That's right, yeah. And we were at 7,800 a couple years ago. So the next two slides are examples of properties that are homesteaded. This particular slide is homesteaded residential properties and what the impact of the proposed millage rate at 7.9 based on property value increases would be. So the Florida Save Our Home law says that homesteaded properties are capped at a 3% increase in taxable value or the CPI, whichever is lower. So the CPI that the property appraiser is using this year is 2.1%. So we give four scenarios. We give a property that's valued at $50,000, $150,000, $250,000, and $500,000. We apply the homestead to that from 1 year to the next. So if you look at the $150,000 value, currently less the $50,000 homestead, you'd get a taxable value of $100,000. The current millage is 7.9. They pay $790 a year in taxes. For the upcoming year, that value would increase 2.1% because that's the cap based on homesteaded properties. So that value would increase to $153,150. Take out the $50,000 homestead. Your taxable value is $103,150. Apply the millage rate that we're proposing at 7.9. Your annual property tax would go up to $815, or a $25 increase annually. And it's the same calculation for $250,000. You can see the annual property tax goes from $1,580 to $1,621. $500,000 property goes from $3,555 to $3,638.
Tim, we're going to talk later on in this discussion about if that new homestead law passes.
We will certainly discuss that.
Thank you.
This one is for commercial and non-homesteaded properties, and remember that these are ones that do not have the luxury of the homestead exemption. And because of that, they can experience an increase in taxable value based on the market rate or the assessed value rate that Palm Beach County property appraiser determines. What we've done in this one is the only way we can do this example is we have to take the average, which they give us, of 8.25%. So on this one, we do a $50,000, $150,000, $500,000, and $1 million taxable value. And we, in essence, say that they have increased 8.25%, which is the average across the city. So again, on the $150,000, that would change to $162,375. Applying the millage rate from the current year and the one that we're proposing, which is the same, that annual property taxes would increase from $11.85 to $12.83. If you do the million, it increases to $1,082,500, and the annual property tax increases from $7,900 to $8,552, I think, if I read that right. So again, that's on either investment property or commercial properties. This slide shows you all of the funds that you'll be adopting in September. The proposed budget book that you have in front of you includes all of these, which is the utilities, solid waste, golf course, fleet, warehouse. These are the dollar amounts. It totals the 202 that I mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint. Under capital improvement projects, where it says general government, that 5.8 includes what we call our general capital plus our surtax capital, because we've broken that out into a separate fund to account for that, and you'll adopt projects specifically for those tax. We just have it collapsed here to the 5.8 million. That's the end of the intro and general part of the workshop. So now what we have on the schedule is to go through the general fund departments.
No, actually,
public comment.
Tim, Laura, we said we're going to have public comments.
Sorry, yep.
And so I'd like to ask anybody from the audience would like to come up to anywhere for 2 minutes or so to have any questions regarding the general fund allocation. We will have comments at the end of the meeting regarding any specific department.
I do have a question before we go into public comment. There seems to be a discrepancy. So at the end here where you have general fund, total general fund, you have 83,347, but I remember you mentioned that we amended the budget to 83,766 because of the town square allocation. So am I accurate in that number?
So which slide are you on, Commissioner? I'm sorry.
The second to last slide where you have the expenditure summary, you have the total general fund as 83,347. That should be 83,700, correct?
So the 83,347 should be the proposed budget for 17-18. Right.
The amendment was done this year?
Oh.
Right, so how does that impact?
That last slide, or what I call the next to last slide, is what you're reviewing for the proposed budget for next year, which is 83.347. The current year budget started at 79.4, and then we did the town square.
We amended it.
Then we did the town square of this 4.3. So the current year budget, 16-17, is now 83.766.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
I know, it's a little.
That's fine, thank you.
Yes, it's open to public comments now.
Susan Oyer, 140 Southeast 27th Way.
Mayor, did you say timed?
I said around 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay.
I'll keep it within my two. Susan Oyer, 140 Southeast 27th Way. Looking at page 9, why, let me go to page 9, so I can say the right words. I think it's page 9. The volunteer recognition program, why is that more than the employee recognition program? I mean, I would think the employees would matter more, and I would think the volunteers would matter less, and it should be less money.
They actually get a salary. So there's that, so you have to
Yeah.
also realize as well. So this is
Oh, I know.
above and beyond what they're paid.
Right, but then I guess that gets me to my next question is why does it have to be so much for both? I mean, are they doing something spectacular for these people?
Yeah.
Okay. It just seems like $22,000 is a lot of money to spend for volunteers and employee recognition, although I'm all for the employee recognition and less for the volunteer recognition. Page 10, maybe I missed it, maybe I was distracted, I don't know. Why is there an increase in the amount proposed for city commission? Did I miss discussion on that along the way?
No, we just went through it, just overview briefly. We haven't got into the individual departments.
Oh, okay.
That would be the next step.
Oh, okay, no problem. And page 17, and Commissioner Costello alluded to this, I believe it was Commissioner Costello, talking about the properties paying under $200 in taxes. Is there a concentration of these properties, or are they actually all over the city? Because I understand where it makes sense that some of these could be old properties that have been in one hand all along and haven't sold. But is there a concentration? Is that something we should be looking at?
To be honest, I have no idea if there's a concentration or not. The property appraiser doesn't tell it. I mean,
Oh, okay. It just seems like maybe that would be something we should be looking at. You know, I don't know how to deal with that, but it seems like they should be paying more money, and there shouldn't be anyone paying no taxes. I mean, at least charge some minimum amount. Seems like that would be fair. If they're getting the police and the fire services too, and they're getting all the benefits of, you know, Kinetic and every fun thing we do in the city, shouldn't they have to pay something for that? Yeah, they want to hate me right now.
I mean, property taxes are based on taxable value of the property, based on legislative passage of homestead exemptions. If you have a property that is assessed at $50,000 and they have a $50,000 homestead, there's no value for the millage to be assessed on.
But isn't there a city ordinance that we passed?
Susan, there's like different exemptions, so like if someone has disability, they can get a homestead exemption. Elderly has a different, also a homestead exemption. So if their property value is not above that homestead exemption, they pay zero in property value. However, they do pay the non-ad valorem taxes, such as the fire assessment and the waste for Palm Beach County.
Yeah, but it just seems like, shouldn't they be paying $10 even?
That's not how it works.
Right. Susan, let me answer that.
I need to run the world, I
Yeah,
guess.
years ago, they used to pick on my district too. They used to say VRG was a big user of the services and wasn't paying taxes. I'm going to be the one to go ahead and tell you, okay? I don't mind. So that is a concentration right there, Village Royal, Yellow and Green, VRG.
Right. Oh, I understand.
Yeah,
There's a
okay.
lot of elderly condos
Yeah,
in the
that's
city.
what I'm saying,
and-
yes.
But it just seems like there should be some contribution by everyone, you know?
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that was 3.5, just if you want to get a concept of what it takes for somebody to speak for 2 minutes.
I just want to say, wow. I think I sent everybody a letter.
Into the microphone, can you state your name and address for the record?
Charles Cantor, 2905 South Greenleaf Circle, Boynton Beach, Florida, 33426. I just want to say I won't need 2 minutes. I just want to make sure that we get on this budget, that we are in fact going to do Quantum Park and get some action west of 95. West of 95 is growing faster than you are down here. And remember that we do come with money and funding. We don't need a lot of money in the budget. We have money. We have plans to raise more money. We just want to make sure that we get the park. It is not put up, it is no zoning changes for that or anything of that nature. If it's a year or 2 years, we've invested a lot of time, effort, and remember, the name of our development that we live in is Parkside, and that means Parkside. All right, I said enough. You got my. Anybody here want another copy of the original plan that was done? I'll gladly email it to you. Just, got my address?
Thank you,
Call
Charles.
me. Thank you very much. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks.
Working? Yeah. Harry Woodworth, 685 Northeast 15th Place, Boynton Beach, Florida. Same thing I've talked about for the last 3 budget meetings. Somewhere in here, could there be some consideration for funding for maintenance of existing infrastructure, whatever you want to call it? I'm talking specifically about Boynton Beach Boulevard and what it looks like from Seacrest over to Federal, and Federal Highway, what it looks like from Boynton Beach Boulevard to Gateway. You got all kinds of new developments you're talking about in here that are coming up in those areas, and go talk to the people at Peninsula. They're just started another advertising campaign because they can't give those things away because the residents come out and drive down Federal Highway. There's a trash pile on the west side of Federal that would fit in a pickup truck that's been there for 4 years. There's a sign that's been laying there for 2 years. The cable has been laying there by our neighborhood since the hurricanes 10 years ago. I've personally picked it up and put it back 3 or 4 times because you can't ride over it when it's laying on the sidewalk. Those are simple things. The irrigation on the west side of Federal's been torn up for. We've stopped calling in. It's just not worth it. Nobody has any interest in being the steward of what that looks like. And I got news for you. People buying $500,000 apartments do not drive down Federal Highway and look at paver bricks that are 18 years old that have never been cleaned once. Same thing on Boynton Beach Boulevard. Drive very slowly from Seacrest over to Federal and see all of the paver brick areas that blend nicely with the pavement because they haven't been cleaned in almost 20 years, not even once. I mean, I get my entire driveway cleaned. 6,000 square feet of pavers, it costs me $120 a year. Please, could we do something with these simple, low-hanging things that are highly leveraged to the kind of people you want to buy these $500,000 apartments or these $2,000 a month rentals? They aren't going to like the way it looks, and this is low-hanging, highly leveraged stuff. Just please, a little money in maintenance for the simple stuff. Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Carradore, 248 Main Boulevard.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Mark Carradore, 248 Main Boulevard. Good evening. The fire assessment going up again. This was originally supposed to be a 3-year assessment, according to Bill Bingham, fire chief at the time, that was to pay for buildings and equipment, not for payroll, not for pensions. Yet that was changed several years ago by a previous city manager, previous finance person, and has since gone up. Now this will be the 3rd increase from the original 3-year assessment. I have no problem with it. I understand what it's needed for, and I support what it's needed for. Just wanted to point that out. Secondly, I concur with Harry. I recently had a meeting with people that do development throughout Palm Beach County. And they actually said to me that when they go to Boynton Beach, they take A1A down to Ocean Boulevard, to Ocean Avenue, come across through Ocean Ridge because they're afraid that they're going to lose the client if they take them on Gateway or Boynton Beach Boulevard. That's not me speaking, that's your economic development people for the county. So we do need to invest in Boynton Beach Boulevard. We need to make it more attractive. We need to do the same thing for Gateway. We also need to address once and for all the flooding issue off of Gateway. Those people were told they didn't need flood insurance. Then we had the flooding. They had to pay out of pocket, some of which had to pay $30,000 out of pocket, not being able to recover it. And we need to fix that once and for all for those folks over there. I know it's in the plans, Colin. We need to do it sooner rather than later. Those people have suffered enough. I have no problem if you find a way to do the rollback. We've had several years now of increased taxes. Our values have increased. We need to manage our money better. 70 to 73% of your budget goes to the 2 most important things to all citizens, police and fire. Don't change that. Those are your priorities. They're not going to change. That's what the citizens pay for. 3rd thing on that list is their garbage pickup. You want to get somebody mad, leave garbage out for 2 days. You'll get people mad in this city. So those are your 3 priorities, and I'm surprised at some things that have gone up, but I'm going to wait to hear specifically about those each departments, because in some areas where we should be increasing, we're not, and other areas we're increasing when we've been increasing each of the last 3 years. So it's a concern, and I'll wait for those department numbers. And once again, thank you. I want to thank Tony and Tim and Lori and the whole team, because this process, they do a diligent job. These numbers in front of you are not estimates. They are based on realities. And I want to thank them. Thank you, Tony.
Cindy Falco Di Corrado, 316 Northwest 1st Avenue. I'm only addressing this here because I just heard it here and it kind of surprised me. I see that just so I have clarity, do we make money off of people ODing? Is that what I heard for the 305?
Money off of what?
No, we lose
We lose at least,
So we lose
It
money.
costs- yeah,
So it costs the city more money. So and we have a lot of people that I'm listening to, just because this really concerns me, that come in from other states, other areas. We don't have any names on them. We don't have addresses. These are people that are coming in supposedly for rehab, getting kicked out of rehab, or choosing to go back into the drug world and not follow through with rehab. And so there's got to be a better way to vet, I hate using that word, but that's kind of a new word we're using these days, to find out where these people are and what we can do to do a better job to really bring recovery. Because it looks like it's just a perpetuating problem. And if it's costing the city for people who choose to do heroin, and I have most compassion for those who are addicted, but we're not seeming to really help the problem. We don't seem to be doing anything to promote the real healing. We don't even have, as I was listening to one of the meetings in FAR, there's only 7 out of all the rehab homes that are registered. We got to do better.
Again, these are state legislative issues that supersede our own capabilities, and sometimes federal issues. So we, with respect to what a single municipality can
Right.
do, the county has much more leverage and resources to provide some sort of assistance.
But don't we, the people who pay these taxes, have any say in this? This is where I get a little befuddled, because all
We
this
don't
comes
have
out of
any
our
say.
dollars.
If the state law and the federal law supersede what we might want to do, we have no say.
And we can't change any of that, as a people, as a
We
group,
can
as a city.
lobby legislators in Tallahassee and Washington, D.C., but some of them are distracted by personal interests, sadly.
Just because it seems to be a problem in Delray and Boynton, and most people hear about it every day, and we read about it in the newspaper every day, and it just says as a community, we should be doing a lot better and doing something with our tax dollars to help this situation instead of it keep perpetuating. And another thing, I do want to concur with what the gentleman prior to me said in regards to Boynton Beach Boulevard and also Woolbright. When you exit off of any one of those exits and come into our community, it does not represent. And I know a lot of people who purchased homes are working diligently on their homes to make their homes look beautiful and spending lots of their own dollars to do that. And when you come into certain areas, it's downright scary. We need to really look at those. I know that part of it's with the federal or this, that, and the other, but there's got to be something better we can do, even with our own. I know the city owns the funeral home. I mean, there should be trees put up in front of the
No,
gate.
the city owned the cemetery, not the funeral home. Get it right.
Not the funeral home, the
Yeah,
cemetery.
okay.
Okay, let's get straight. I got you. Yes, the cemetery. Because I drove down it the other day, and it kind of looks, desolate. I mean, if we put trees along there, it would at least soften that up. There's things we can do, I think, that will not cost a lot of money, but it will take some money, some time, and some really looking at the city as an overture on other parts like Woolbright and
Thank you.
enhance it. You're welcome. Thank you.
But in regards to funding for the overdose, maybe the federal government, I'm just saying, do they have grants or anything that you all can apply for? Because I'm listening to the TV every morning and they're saying, are you all looking at any of that?
There's a grant that just became available, but it's a large grant, and we are participating with Palm Beach County to try to get those bond funds in here, but we're diligently working on it.
Thank you.
Good evening, James Dvorsny, 2625 Lake Drive North, 33435.
James, it'll move. You can move it up so you don't have to bend over. Yeah. There you go.
A couple of weeks back, I attended the FDOT Metropolitan Planning Organization, Kimley Horn, and Treasure Coast Planning Authorities plans for Federal Highway. So as you're aware, Federal Highway is slated to be repaved from George Bush Boulevard to Canal 16 in fiscal year 2018. So repaving, repainting the bicycle lanes, and repainting the driving lanes are on the slate. As you heard a couple of the citizens speak out already, talk about low-hanging fruit. Perhaps we could do something to throw some money in ourselves, since the city isn't contributing anything to the repaving of the road. Why don't we find some money in the budget to coincide with that? Since we've invested so much money already into Boynton Beach Boulevard, just think of what that cost would be if we didn't have to repave it. So we have that coming already. So why don't we try to look for money in the budget so that we can beautify Federal Highway and make that a better looking place for some of your highest tax dollar citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, on Boynton Beach Boulevard, we just spent, I believe, $500,000-$600,000 to form a master plan on what we want. CRA did to form what we want Boynton Beach Boulevard to look like in the future.
Yes.
So that's in the works. I mean, we're working on that.
Yeah, I think the master planning process was maybe about $500,000, I'm not sure. And then I think the budget for the actual work to be completed from 95 to federal, I think was a cost estimate of $12 million.
That's correct.
So it would have to probably most likely be phased in and over years. And there are sections, just FYI, the sections that as we move forward with hopefully with Town Square and some of the improvements we're doing along there, that will be included in some of the scope of the redevelopment work. So we might be able to get some pieces at it relatively soon until we can reach that funding level need of $12 million.
I'm going to address Federal Highway, what the gentlemen they're speaking about. They're talking about cables that's hanging down, FP&L poles that need to be removed and stuff. And I'm just saying these are things that they tell us every year, and it's the same story over and over again, and nobody seems to get interested until the same individuals come up and speak. I'm just saying, yeah, you all need to give more care and more looking at Federal Highway from Boynton Beach Boulevard all the way up. And I'm just saying, and it is bad the way it's kept. I'm just saying we have a Welcome to Boynton sign over here where they're building the train tracks and everything. The people that's working there, I'll wait till y'all finish talking.
No, just confirming right-of-way issues with Colin to be able to respond to your
Okay, but I
to your
still
answer.
wait. Okay, and right where they're doing the building of the train track, I'm just saying, the company itself, they're parking over there in front of the sign saying, "Welcome to Boynton." What we put over there, we're losing money, they're pulling over there, they're tearing that up, and I'm just saying, it seems like it doesn't bother anybody except one or two citizens that live in District 2 that said, "Commissioner McCray, have you seen what they're doing?" I'm paying attention to what they're saying, and whenever it seems like we come down from District 2 saying anything, it seems like it turns a deaf ear. But we are part of this community, and I hear what they're saying, and we want to be treated fairly. I'm just saying, poles can be taken down. Cables can be taken down. These are small things. And you're saying the right-of-way? Yeah, they are in the right-of-way, and somebody's responsible for the right-of-way. Now listen to you.
Yeah, so I'd like to respond, Colin Groff. The challenge we have on federal highways, it is a DOT road. It's not city, and so everything we do, we have to go to DOT to talk to them and ask them for permission. And I know Jeff spends, it's probably 3 to 4 times a week calling DOT and talking to them about things on Federal Highway to get it cleaned up. We also have the poles that are FP&L. The problem we have on Federal Highway is nothing within that road is owned by the city, so we don't have any legal authority to do anything on anything within that right-of-way. That doesn't mean we don't call them routinely and regularly. We're in contact with FP&L weekly. We're in contact with some of these. I would like to say Harry did a very good job getting a bunch of poles taken out because he stayed on them until they took it out, and that's what it takes. And we're stepping up the effort to stay on these other agencies so they come into Boynton Beach and do their job. They are being paid to do it. We have to stay on them to get them to do their job. And that's what staff's job is, and we're going to continue to get better at it and continue to bother them until they do their job. And Gateway, we heard Gateway earlier. Gateway's not Gateway, Seacrest is the same problem. It's a county road. There are several areas that flood every time it rains. We're on the county a couple times a month telling them, come spend some of your money in our city because the city pays you that money. You need to bring it back into the city and invest in this city, the money that these citizens pay to the county. And so we're doing our best within very constrained an environment with these other agencies because, to be honest with you, they deal with a lot of people, and until you can become the biggest squeaky wheel they have, they're probably not going to respond to you. So we're trying to be the biggest squeaky wheel that they have.
But Colin, we have representatives that represent the city of Boynton on the county level. We have representatives that represent us on the state level. We have representatives that represent us on the federal level. So we have representatives. I'm just saying, I don't know why you all cannot challenge them. It's not my job to make all the phone calls. I'm just saying. Right. You said you want to be a squeaky wheel, start squeaking more.
And we're going to do the best we can and continue to squeak more.
Because they're saying the same thing. For 13 years I've been here. I'm hearing the same story.
I'll say in response to some of those comments regarding improvements in that particular area, while the city often has financial restraints that make such improvements difficult, there is another entity within the city, and that's the CRA. And I'll use this time to point out something I've said for as long as I've been up here. As long as we prudently spend the money and don't waste money or talk about how $50,000 or $100,000 here doesn't really matter, it all matters. So some of these things, whether you're talking about, you know, who actually is able to do certain things on certain roadways, the city, the state, the county, et cetera, but if we spend our money responsibly and make prudent decisions as a CRA, that could free up potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to do some of these things. So I'll take my opportunity to plug again that in making future decisions on the CRA, it's best that we don't vote in a manner that throws away hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year, because it could be better spent.
And in regards to that, you know, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be through with this, in regards to the CRA was designated for blighted areas, and I'm just saying, anytime they come to spending money, it seems like, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out because I'm kind of getting upset about this. For the heart of Boynton, it seems like people get upset that sits up here. I'm just saying, you know, it wasn't the heart of Boynton that blighted the area. It was this government that came in and blighted the area and tore down our buildings and things, but you all going to give us something back. We have been waiting now for like 25 years, and we are still waiting. Sir, you wasn't here when we had what was a thriving MLK Boulevard, and you said somebody invested.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
I wasn't here.
I'm through with it.
I was barely alive.
Vice Mayor,
I'm 33.
Vice Mayor, excuse me, it's not
I'm
over.
talking
Public
about
comment's
changes
not over.
moving forward, not the history of the city, which we can't change.
Point of order.
Yes.
Good evening, Jerry Taylor, 1086 Southwest 26th Avenue. Just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, there was a thought about where can you get some money to do some of these things. Don't forget, we just had a 1-cent sales tax approved that's supposed to go to infrastructure. A lot of the things that they're bringing up about pavements and sidewalks, stuff like that, can be covered under that money. And I believe, I've looked forward to the capital budget, which you'll probably be looking at. Some of those items are already being addressed, and more can be addressed in the years to follow. There's a lot of money coming with that 1-cent tax. They can take care of a lot of, and there's where your money is to correct a lot of these things that people want to see taken care of.
Thank you.
Colin, just for a point of information, it's not so much the financing of some of these projects, it's getting the DOT to get on board with us. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We have
Thank
to do
you.
everything through them.
Thank you.
And just, I wanted to elaborate on what Commissioner McCray said earlier about the, and we share the frustration tremendously up at the north end of town on Federal Highway, where we just put in the CRA did that new beautification project, and they're putting rail in, or they're doing bridge work, Jeff, I forget which it is, and they're all the FEC folks, they're all over the place, the cars parked on our new grass and the whole thing. That's their right-of-way, and when we take and spend our money to improve those right-of-ways, they allow us to do that, but they also maintain control of that, and we do it at our risk. And when I talked to Jeff at length about the frustration, and he said, they can go in, they can tear it up, and we would have to fix it. And that's the deal that goes along that whole stretch. So we do have very little control on some of these programs. We don't drive by that and ignore that every day. It's terrible to look at, and you get upset. We hope they'll do the right thing when they're finished to make sure that grass is green again and looking good. But, you know, they have that right to be in that area, and we deal with it the best we can. I will say we have very good relationships with those agencies. Jeff does a phenomenal job, and when you're nice and you work with them and you cooperate, they actually are very responsive to us on some areas. So we share your frustration, Commissioner, very much so.
So as a point of reference, since we're talking about being loud, squeaky wheels, you know, we as a city here, we have also a role to play to our local entity in government, which is the county government. And the fact that, you know, we can have residents who can be very vocal, not just here at the city level, but also at the county level, will also attract more eyes and attention to the city of Boynton Beach, so that we can get what's equally, you know, that we pay compared to the other cities in the county, so that we can get the services that we're paying for. So when we talk about these issues and we say we're handicapped to a certain extent, we also ask that our residents and our citizens, they go to the county and they express these concerns, because that's also how we get more attention drawn here to the city and we get things done.
Yep. Thank you.
Right. Is there any more public comments? Yep. Got a couple.
Woodrow Hay, 427 Northwest 5th Avenue.
just wanted to make an observation. I was driving, excuse me, up in West Palm Beach on, I think it's Kinsey Avenue, right there where the Urban League is, and the road between Australian and US 1. The bicycle lanes are painted green on each side. And that really was appealing to the eye, but it also made me aware of that lane more so than the way it is now, not being painted. So maybe we want to consider or look at the cost of how much it would take to do that, since the federal, they're coming in to do this anyway. I think it would be a win-win to make the drivers on that road be aware of that lane, because it did for me as I drove down that road. I was aware. Sometimes I see people just kind of drifting, but if you have a moment, go up to West Palm and drive down that road that I'm talking about, and you'll see the impact that it has had on me as a driver. So I would like for us to consider that as an attraction, as something different for our city, and also to get that appeal that Dr. DeVorsey was talking about, some extra dollars that we want to invest in our city to work with the federal as they do the resurfacing, is to make that a consideration. I don't know if anybody has driven down that road.
It's a pilot project West Palm was doing as part of a Complete Streets initiative. And yes, that green is there is to point out, to make it a little more cyclist friendly. Many people are afraid to ride, rightfully so, in those lanes on going down Federal in those skinny little bike lanes,
Yes.
in fear of getting
Yes.
hit and killed. So we can certainly, we'll talk to FDOT and whether or not that's one of their road standards that they would allow. But yes, it's a concept we would
I'll weigh
love to do.
It's not just West Palm. If someone wants to go see it, we actually do have it. Our neighbor to the south, right there in Delray Beach. If you just take Seacrest Boulevard and just ride down when it turns into, I think, Northeast 2nd, I believe that's what it's called in Delray. If you just follow that road down right after George Bush, right after you pass George Bush, you'll see that whole area has been repaved. It's really beautiful. And
How did you like it?
It's very
beautiful.
nice.
And that's their Complete Streets concept.
For US 1, the corridor that they're doing in the proposed, what they have proposed, that will be part of that new process as they redo US 1. It will have more obvious bike lanes. I'm not sure if it's going to be green, but the bike lane should be better noticeable to the driver and to the people who are passing that area. So I would ideally like to see that on Federal, on Seacrest, and again on our major thoroughfares like Boynton Beach and Gateway. So these are, in terms of me, when I'm always kind of pushing on the CRA end for us to fund that revenue to get the Kimley Horn study, it's to say that when we have somebody driving into Boynton Beach Boulevard, we don't want to have people bypassing our thoroughfares to bring people into the city. We want them to go down our main thoroughfares, especially if it's our namesake boulevard. We want to have that pride instilled in it. So I'm all for that.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Butch Buoni, 450 Horizons East, number 304, Boynton Beach, 33435. I'm representing Sterling Village, a condominium association of 840 of your residents. I would like to commend you for the job you've done, as was said before, agree with everything else that was said, but I would like to bring up something that was passed over quickly, yet is going to cost us a lot of money. Solid waste, 5.4% doesn't sound like a lot. We pay over $10,000 a month for solid waste fees. You've just jumped our budget. You've made quite an increase. You know, we pay $120,000 a year, so when you start talking 5.4%, it's a big jump.
Butch, are you on dumpsters? Are you on commercial? Doesn't apply to commercial.
Then I stand corrected.
It's only residential.
Residential only?
Single-family residential and duplex. Multifamily as well, sorry, not commercial.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
I like those kind of solutions.
So do I. The fire tax, if you will, the 20% jump, that's a pretty good jump, rather than increasing the taxes. But something that was also talked about in your budget was your tax receipts. Now, I'm sure Jim and you are aware, there has been a court decision on tax receipts, and it all started with B&B about an overnight rental does not constitute a business, and that's going to have some fallout, I think, with your business tax receipts, because you are making our people get licenses according to your regulation, no matter how many nights a week or a year are rented. So that might be a consideration. I don't know whether you're really going to see 75,000 or 50,000. But that was it. Thank you.
All right, seeing no more public comments, moving on to the general fund administrative departments.
Go back to full screen. All right, so where we're at now is that we usually go through departments. What I would ask, if the commission wants to do, is based on the list that's on this slide and the next slide, we can touch bases on the smaller ones, and you can have the department heads come up for the bigger ones, which I mean police, fire, development, public works, and recreation, if that suits the commission. If there's a specific item on a specific department, the department heads are here to answer the question. We can start with city commission. The increase there partially is last year, if you remember correctly, I brought to you a realignment of commission salaries based on the ordinance that was passed by referendum to get everyone back in line. That was during the year, so the impact is going to hit this upcoming year. We also increased the funding for business meetings for the commission. This commission, one, is going to some more local meetings than previous commissions, so we just felt that the need was to include additional funding. Also, the membership for the National League of Cities, which is $5,500, is in that $35,000 increase. I'll just continue. If you want to stop me, stop me. If that's okay with you guys, it's all up to you. I don't want to...
Mayor, how would you like to do this? Do you want to go by exception, or do you want...
So basically, we got administrative departments, police department, fire department, development, public works, recreation.
Those are the big ones.
And so I'd like to get through, basically, if we can get through everything before police before 7, that'd be great.
Okay. Do you mind if I just try to touch bases and see if we can get through them?
Yeah, if you get it, yep.
The quick one, we can jump, like city clerk went down 35,000. There's no election this year. The current year cost $70,000. That's your decrease there that you're going to see. Marketing and communications went up 19,000. We can...
City Hall, sorry, marketing communication.
Yeah.
Jim, who's in charge of our marketing?
Eleanor?
Are we in the process of getting, she definitely needs help up there. Is that in the budget?
She requested an additional position, but I had to cut it. We do have one vacancy right now that, due to not being, we have a need for at least 2 more individuals to assist her with some digital services support as well as marketing support. And I can't do both. So we are reclassifying the existing position we have, and I'm upgrading it to a marketing manager, which will try to do a little bit of both and fill that position this current year. So I was not able to fund her position for next year. So that we do need to grow.
So what you're telling me, she's going to have some help?
One person.
She's going to have one person helping her, at least?
At least. Well, no, one. One between now and all next fiscal year. unless the commission wants to do something differently. We had a request, I had a request in the initial budget of over 45 to about 48 new positions. Couldn't afford it. So I made the tough decisions and went through and basically got us to where we were today.
I just feel it's such an essential part of our
They all
operation,
are.
the marketing, our city. We have one person up there with 3 screens going and 4 computers and a desk piled up to her eyebrows and papers. I just figure that,
And if she goes home and doesn't come back, we're in a lot of trouble.
exactly.
So I'm trying to get her some help. But yes, we struggle with that with every one of those requests that came into me. We're all very valid and warranted, but we can only do what we have with the money we have. So if the commission, that's why we're here today. If you want to shift priorities around and you want to take something out and add something, we could talk. That's exactly why we're here today.
So Lori, that position that you're considering in terms of the administrative assistant / commission aide, could that person potentially wear another hat of helping Eleanor do what she does with posting things and just different social media or digital media or whatnot?
It's difficult in that role. First of all, the one we're proposing is an entry-level administrative position, so basically will answer phones and do some complaint handling and so forth and assist the commission with calendars. The type of work that Eleanor needs help with needs quiet space, needs somebody who can focus, who has the training, and I'd probably need Eleanor to speak a little better. I'd probably butcher her marketing terms. In terms of skill level and skill sets, their position there is not ideal for what she needs. They need to be able to be in an office and to be able to write content and to be able to concentrate. To have that person out there is just not practical. And it's two totally different skill sets. Probably double difference in salaries.
Didn't we hire someone, it didn't quite work out, but didn't we have someone slated for that slot at this point?
We did.
Well, there was someone in that position that was
Correct.
not successful in that position.
But didn't
So-
we had funds allocated to pay that individual?
And that's what's currently in your budget, and that's what we're reclassifying and have proposed in the new budget, and we'll be hiring as soon as we get the, we're in the hiring process now. So they'll get on board here hopefully
Ms.
in the next
Eleanor,
30
can you give
days.
us a little update on what's happening in your office?
A lot. No, actually, the position that Lori is referring to is an upgrade in the position that was open, that we had an employee in for 3 months. We realized that I won't be here forever, and we need to have a succession plan. So with HR, we determined the best way to go about filling a position was to reclassify it to a little bit an appointed letter and a little bit higher reclassification so that we could get not only the digital that we need, but the administrative support and the outreach and the additional advertising and marketing that we need in that department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City manager increase, part of that is pension costs, and the way that pension cost is allocated is based on actual salaries in previous years. So some years it goes up and some years it goes down per department. And with the replacement of that one position, there's a couple additional costs that are with it. The City Hall went down for a couple of reasons. One is that's where we had the transfer to the golf course this current year for the $300,000 for the loan, and we don't have it in next year's, or the proposed budget.
Since you brought up the golf course.
Sure.
I know, sure. How is the golf course doing?
The last I understand,
We have
there
a
is a
presentation
presentation of it later. The project is underway, if not complete.
I'll wait till later, because what I have to say, I don't want to, jump the gun. Go ahead.
So that $300,000 isn't in the City Hall. Also, the City Hall is where the contingency amount. In the current year budget, we had $750. On another slide you saw, we had $500,000, so that decreased. What increased is also, that's where we have the portion for the clinic. Remember, this current year, the clinic was in operation only 6 months out of the year, so next year it's a full year, so that cost went up, so the net was a decrease of $400,000. You discussed marketing. City clerk went down because there's no election. Finance went up, it was a reallocation of general pension costs was the majority of that, based on the previous year actual expenditures, and some minor costs for allocation charges. Information technology is where that new network administrator is housed, so that's included in that $207,000, along with increases for software maintenance that we can go through if you'd like, or we can move on. Human Resources had a minor increase of $17,000, but that is also where we've got the funds budgeted for employee recognition.
Yes.
And tuition reimbursement.
Stop right there. While you're on Human Resources. As a city of this size, how many open positions do we have here in the city? Since you said Human Resource, I'm not worried about the money. How many
I've got
vacancies?
I think I do. Do you have your vacancy report, Julie?
I don't have one.
Okay, she does. I do. I just have to find it. One, two, three, 4, 6. It looks to me about 26 positions are open and in some form or stages of the hiring process. That be correct, Julie?
And you figure we have...
You have a copy? Laura, you have a copy? Can I get a copy? Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll give them to you tomorrow.
And Julie, that's across the city, right?
Yeah, that's in all funds.
All funds. So we have 790 full-time employees?
Are those positions funded but not filled?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're at, like I said, different stages where, have made offers on some are in the
interview process.
Application taking, some are in the interview process, so.
So when those positions that are open and not filled, that money stays?
It stays in the existing budget. Right. So it's in your 2016-17 adopted budget.
Right.
It's also, unless there is a reduction in staff, included in your 17-18 proposed budget. Nothing is carried from one year to the next in the general fund for that purpose. Everything lapses at September 30th, and we rebudget for it the next year. But it's included in the proposed budget that you have in front of you.
So if those monies aren't used for those positions, can it be moved, that we move money around all the time? Can those salaries that are not being paid, can that money be used for other things?
It can in the existing year.
Correct. Just not carried over.
Right. And if it's not spent, then it falls into fund balance at the end of the year. Or your reserve, whatever you want to call it, your...
Tim, let me ask you a question, because I always ask this every year. Budget-wise, how much money did we save in 2016 from the proposed budget that we haven't done 17 years?
It's between 940 and 980,000 that we came in under budget for 15-16.
Almost $1 million.
Right.
Thank you.
So Human Resources went up 17,000. City Attorney, you already touched on it, went down 40,000. So you're at the police for the 3 sections if you'd like to move into that.
Does that sound good?
Is that okay with you guys?
Mayor, it's been an hour and a half. Do you want a break?
Yeah, that's what it sounds good. Let's take a 5-minute break for police. Chief Katz, when you're ready.
Thank you. I have a lot of fun. Do we have a presentation? I love this. It's coming. If we could just go to directly to the second slide, please.
Chief, before you go to any slides, I need to know, in the police department, I need to know the position that's open now.
We currently have 4 police officer positions open, and they are, as the city manager said earlier, in various states of recruitment right now.
Okay, any other parts of the police department has openings?
Communications specialist?
I'm not certain about communication specialists. I think we're up to staff, but I can look into it and get back with you and let you know.
Lori has it.
Okay, yeah, they're the 4 officers. Okay, so it looks like we have 4 3 communication dispatcher positions open, also in various stages of hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, because we had this talk before, Madam Manager, are these 4 police officers and 3 communications, are they in this year's budget? Because I thought you said that we weren't funding any new positions in this budget.
Existing positions that are in the budget, they're just at this point vacant through either promotions or people leaving, but they're funded, existing, current, not new positions.
Like we talked about before, about those positions that, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you could go to the next slide, please. I realize that it's getting a little bit late, so I'm going to try to fly through this.
No.
But certainly, if you have any questions whatsoever,
Nice try, Chief.
by all means. I'll cut to the chase. Overall, between the 3 divisions, the police department is requesting a little over a 5% increase in our overall funding between last year and this year. And what I'd like to point out is the value that we're getting for the dollars that we're spending, because we can look at the costs, but we also need to look at what the work outputs are. And what I would share with you is that in last year, when we sat here, I shared that we had a 10% increase in calls from service, from about 57,000 calls in 2014 to 63,000 calls in 2015. Today, we look back on the experience that we had in 2016, and we have another increase, this time 72,000 calls for service. So that would mean that in 2 years, we have gone from 57,000 calls to 72,000 calls without experiencing an increase in staffing, in sworn staffing. What I would also share with you is that during this period of time, we've experienced what we all know to be called the opioid epidemic.
Before you go there, I'm sorry. That's 72,0260. Is that, explain that? I'm just saying, it's supposed to be 026, 000.
That's a typo. The important thing that we know here is that it's 72,000 calls for service.
Okay, that's why I don't go fast, okay.
Yes, sir. So, also since last year, or I should say the year before, we've experienced what we now know to be the opioid epidemic. And I'll highlight a couple of numbers to you for that. Our numbers are a little different from the fire department because the fire department tracks runs of patients. When we respond to an overdose, it's not necessarily a patient that needs medical attention. Sometimes it's a death. Our numbers are in 2016, we experienced 433 overdoses in the city of Boynton Beach with 34 deaths. In 2017, the numbers through June, we've experienced 361 overdoses with 30 deaths. So we are now 4 deaths in the first portion of this year. We are 4 deaths behind all of the deaths that we had last year in overdoses. Our experience with the opioid epidemic, which I've said repeatedly is a public health crisis, is also impacting us in terms of property crime. We're seeing an increase in car thefts, and we are seeing an increase in car burglaries. Overall, if we look at the numbers compared to last year, our citations are down about 800 citations. Our arrests, we made 1 less arrest last year than we did the year before. Our alarm responses are pretty consistent with the year before. Traffic crashes, we've investigated about 400 more traffic crashes last year than we did the year before that. We had 1 less traffic fatality last year than we did in 2015. And we conducted about 4,000 extra patrols in 2016 than we did in 2015.
Explain that to me.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. An extra patrol, so that you're aware, is anytime a member of the public, member of the commission, member of staff says, we're having an issue in this particular location, can you give it some additional police attention? That's an extra patrol. And our personnel, as I said, have conducted about 4,000 more extra patrols last year than what they did the year before. So when you look at the number of calls for service and you look at the amount of work that our personnel are doing, I would submit to you that they are in a, at this point, we are managing the workload that we are experiencing. And we're at that point where we're going to need some additional staff at some point, and when the budget permits and when the resources are there, that is something that we look forward to in terms of providing some relief for our personnel, because the amount of work that they're doing right now is extraordinary, and they should be commended for it.
What does homicide fall out on that report?
In 2015, we had 8 murders, and in 2016, we had 1 murder.
You said 2018?
2016, we had 1 murder.
2016.
So we had 8 in 2015, we had 1 in 2016. It's 1 too many.
Chief, you said car burglaries and break-ins are up. What is the rate of crime? Can you give us a percentage that's up?
Sure. We experienced about a 12% increase in property crime with a specific emphasis on car burglaries and car thefts. That is consistent with the transient population from elsewhere in the country, persons who have come down here to get clean and sober, who for whatever reason have left facilities. They are more or less homeless addicts, and they're looking for money, hopefully for food, but also probably for drugs as well, or to get home.
How does that equal with some of the other communities surrounding us, other municipalities, as far as their rates, crime rates? Do you have that information?
It's very consistent with our neighboring cities, and when I say that, I speak specifically of Delray and Boca Raton. Our crime rate, our property crime rate, increased about 12% last year, and that's the least of those 3 cities, but it is also very consistent. And also, I think it's important to note that our violent crime rate, with the exception of robbery, and robbery is a crime where you use force or the threat of force to obtain property. So there's a profit motive to robbery, unlike other violent crimes. Our violent crime rate went down 2% last year. So it's safer to live in Boynton Beach now than it was before, but your property's not necessarily as safe.
Of the murders that have happened here in Boynton Beach, how many are still in open investigation?
I can get that information for you. Our murder clearance rate is relatively high, and we have made some, I think, pretty progressive moves in the police department of late with respect to our investigations. Our most recent captain's position we filled with the gentleman who ran the Tampa field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and he is running our investigative unit right now and helping to shore up our investigative processes. But I can get the numbers for you with respect to our open homicide cases.
And when you get that information, can you label the ones that you all would consider as cold cases?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The shifting of the code compliance to the fire department, has that made the workload as far as management easier?
I wouldn't say necessarily that it's made it easier. I would say that it's just been the transference of the responsibility to the fire personnel, and we continue to work in partnership with them relating to things like curb stoning and things of that nature. But it's just a transference of the work. The personnel went along with the responsibility, so at its core, we're pretty consistent with where we've been.
Are we actively pursuing that curb stoning ordinance?
No.
To the extent that we can, but as I've shared with you, at this point, we're managing the call volume.
Would somebody like on patrol, regular patrol, and saw something like, the curb stoning, would they stop and investigate that, or?
Not generally. We have 86 personnel assigned to patrol, and that is if 86 personnel are not injured. We do have, I think we have 6 people right now who are out injured because of the nature of the work we do. We have 86 personnel assigned to patrol, and they handled, as I'm showing here, 72,000 calls for service last year. That's a substantial workload.
Let me ask a question. Code, and this is where I'm gonna leave it at code, I don't care what the new name is. It was able to run license plates. How fast is the turnaround time, with you all running license plates, since you all took the responsibility from them? They can't run license plates.
When the code enforcement was with the police department, they had the direct access to the CJIS database.
Thank you.
Since they've left the police department, they don't have the direct access. We have a contractor, it's called a David system, that gives a lot of the same information, but it's not as immediate. So curb stoning doesn't occur as quickly as it did in the past. And the enforcement officers don't have the right. When they were with the police department, they had the legal right to, they have to get the assistance from the police officer, and from their call volume, it's something that takes time to get somebody over there to facilitate the curb stoning. But we're still trying, it's not as efficient.
Thank you. Not as efficient, that's what you said. Thank you.
So as we move along, we can skip through this slide, that's fine. So as we move along, we see the...
Stop, go back. Go back. Neighborhood officer program, I'm just saying, for the CRA, we voted to put in one more officer. I'm just saying, is that amenable?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all we're going to give you. Okay, go ahead now.
Absolutely. But I would like to point out, with respect to the neighborhood officer program, as beneficial as that program is, it is important to highlight that these are sworn police officers whose duty is to build relationships with members of the community. These are not enforcement positions per se. So it does, in some respect, diminish our law enforcement capability in terms of people out there on the road making arrests. So we're looking forward to partnering with the CRA, and we do appreciate the approval of the additional person. And it's going to help us. It's going to help us cultivate relationships, which is important because we need information to conduct successful investigations. But we should be under no illusions that that is going to increase necessarily proactive enforcement measures, curb stoning, things of that nature.
Right, not that it would increase, but let me ask the question. Do they have the power to arrest somebody? This is what I need to know. The 2 officers.
Yes, sir, they absolutely
Thank you.
do. Mm-hmm.
Chief, isn't that the atmosphere or the culture of the police department, to build relation, all your officers, not just these particular 3 that work in the CRA? I mean, isn't that what they're taught to do?
Absolutely, and I think we're doing it now better than we've ever done it before. In the interest of time, I was trying to kind of move beyond this, but we continue doing our shop with a cop. We do a coffee with a cop now. We do our quarterly town hall meetings where we meet with members of the public. And we've had great turnout with that. I think the last couple, we've had 100 to 150 residents come out to our town hall meetings. We actively engage with the public routinely. We have quarterly charitable drives. We do food drives, diaper drives for abused moms. We do a variety of outreach, things that are well above and beyond what you would normally task a police department with doing. But these are important investments that we make with the community, and despite the increased call volume and workload, we're committed to doing it because we really are only as successful as the relationships we build with the members of our public. So as we look here, what we see is the variation between the budget from fiscal year 2016 of $29 million to the proposed budget for 2017 of $30,578,000. Okay, we can kind of go through this. I don't think that that's really what you're looking at. Here are the 3 separate divisional budgets. Each budget is headed by a division commander. They maintain their budgets over the course of the year. So there is some localized control within the department, and there's also a spirit of stewardship between the division commanders, because we look at where is any particular division with regard to their spending of overtime, with the use of their training dollars, things of that nature. So what we're looking at is between a 3 and 5%, or I'm sorry, a 3 and 6% increase in any particular division, and it rolls out to a 5.1% overall increase. A little over half of that increase relates to collective bargaining, pay increases, pension increases, things of that nature. And then I would say probably about 40% of that really relates to things like our new body-worn camera program and the process of rolling out. I'm sorry.
What's contractual obligations? You keep flipping them and it keep popping up. What is the contractual obligation? I'm just saying.
Contractual obligations really relate to the things that we do with technology companies, maintenance service agreements. They have to do with our contracts with doctors for medical physicals, psychologicals, any legal services that we use. So it's kind of a catch-all for any time that we reach out to an expert for their services to help us run the agency.
Okay, look, I understand you're trying to rush through this, but when we're spending like $17 million, I'm in no hurry. Okay.
Chief,
we can go as...
How much of those, what you just mentioned in terms of legal and potentially medical expenses can potentially be done in-house, or are we making sure we do as much of it in-house as possible?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We don't have the capacity to do, for example, we do psychological evaluations of all of our personnel. We do psychological evaluations of personnel prior to instituting assignments in, like, say, our SWAT team. Every member will go through a periodic psychological and an initial. There's an expense associated with that. There was some legislation this year that the state of Florida proposed that would require psychological evaluations for police officers every 4 years. We've had occasion to, based on an officer's behavior, to send an officer to proactively send them to a forensic psychologist for an evaluation. That's very expensive.
Right. I think I'm mentioning more, I guess, the basics, so not psychology, but stuff maybe that we can do in-house in our clinic, for example, that we just set up. So are we trying to reallocate some of these funds for basic health examinations or whatever things that can be done in-house? Are we trying to reallocate those funds? That way we can diminish on the budget.
Yes. With the opening of the clinic, that is something that we are going to effort this year, and I do anticipate some savings in that area.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And you all do cultural training. Cultural training with your officers, I'm just saying.
Do we do cultural training? We do...
any bias training?
I think he means like sensitivity training, potentially.
We don't have any issues as far as sensitivity is concerned, but what I would say is, yeah, we do cultural diversity training, implicit bias training. We've done de-escalation training this year. The level of training that our personnel are experiencing right now is better than it has been in the 20 years that I've been with the department. We're doing tactical medicine training and issuing kits to all of our personnel to assist patients of traumatic gunshot wounds. That's not just officers, but also members of the public. We're just doing a lot of training. Weapon retention training, we've never done that before. We're doing that now.
What does that mean?
Well, as I always say, that any call for service that we respond to, there's a gun, ours. And about a quarter of the time when an officer is killed in line of duty, they're killed with their own weapon. So it's important that we make sure that our officers know how to maintain control of their weapon if somebody tries to take it from them.
Okay.
Chief, I'm sorry.
And Chief, while we're on the topic of diversity and everything, how is that program working in terms of helping to recruit officers that resemble our community more?
We're having great success as far as our efforts to recruit a diverse workforce. As I've said before, we hire about 1.3% of the people who apply for a position with our agency. Over the last 4 years, 82% of the people that we've hired have college degrees, 43% are ethnic or racial minorities, 34% are female, about 40% are military veterans, and generally, the personnel that we hire are a combination of multiple factors that I just
like
mentioned.
those numbers, Chief, but I want to know specifically about the program. I know I sat down with one of your sergeants, lieutenants, I mixed the different ranks, but you guys are working on something. I just want to know, what's the progress of that? How are we doing? I know you talked about potentially going to different police academies, like all across the state, to recruit. How's that going?
That process doesn't work. I was a recruiter for this agency in 1999 and 2000. If we target people because of how they look or where they come from, that is not a good hiring practice. We look for objective criteria for personnel, and we select. What we do is we try to build our brand to the extent we can, and we select personnel from that. And we have, I think the measure of success of our program are the output numbers that I just shared. The fact that 43% of the people that we're hiring are ethnic or racial minorities and 34% are female is an extraordinary testament to our commitment to diversity. I would also share with you, as I have in a previous commission meeting, the work that we've done in partnership with our scouting partners to develop a Cub Scout group, using our explorers to mentor Cub Scouts, then to bring our explorers into what we hope to be a robust community service officer program, then to academy sponsorships, and then eventually into police cars, is a 15-year program that we started about 2 years ago. But it is building roots, and it is a framework that I'm excited about because it means that we will be recruiting talent from within the community for years to come. And I have not seen an agency that has a program of this nature, and I'm very impressed with what its potential is.
Chief, last budget, we allocated some monies for I forget what the system was called, but for take 911 calls, incoming calls, to expedite them, How's that working out?
It's
What's the
working out-
system called? I forget the name.
It's a CAD and records management system.
Thank you.
The procurement process has been completed. I believe it's coming before you on the August 1st agenda to be purchased.
Okay, good.
So, okay, so this is some of the items that you'll see that have, besides pension and benefit or salary increases, where we'll see some increases in our expenses. Body cameras and related training.
Body cameras, all sworn officers have body cameras now?
That's correct, sir. We have 86 members of our Uniformed Services Division, and all of them have been issued 2 cameras. So if one goes down, they have another one.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And on another note, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Commission for their support in that program. It has been a resounding success. We're capturing a lot of good information, a lot of good data. And, when people talk about police and body-worn cameras, they often think of the things that are controversial. We've captured a lot of really positive behavior on the part of our personnel, and we've put some of that information out to the public. And if not for the support that you guys showed us with the body cameras, we wouldn't have access to that information.
Have you captured some that needs improving?
We haven't had any issues at this point where we've had any problems that have come up from the body cameras.
Okay.
So no, we've had no gotcha moments.
Thank you.
But we've had some good stuff.
Okay.
In fact, we had a video of one of our new officers who purchased some groceries for a 91-year-old lady who had her purse stolen in a supermarket. And that video made its way out onto social media. Last I saw, it had 15.5 million hits, the video. You talk about branding and the reputation of a city, that stuff has a positive impact. So, again, that wouldn't be possible without your support, so we appreciate it. Again, we continue with our, somebody brought up cold cases. We are working to develop a program where we're going to look at some of our cold cases. We have a lot of cases back from the 80s and the 90s where we didn't have DNA technology at the time. We're going to revisit that stuff. We're going to take a look at the evidence. And of course, obviously, there's an expense associated with that. And just so that the public is aware, and our elected officials as well, DNA testing can sometimes take 6 to 8 months. It doesn't come back in an episode like on TV.
Didn't Detective Josephs just solve a case?
That's correct. That was actually one of the cold case initiatives. That was a sexual battery, and the subject was leaving to get on a plane to go to another country, and we were able to work with our partners at the U.S. Marshal's Office to interdict him. And apparently there was a flight flying to Philadelphia that got a heck of a show in the airport. Let's see, our predictive policing program, we're very, very excited about this. This is something you guys approved about a year ago, and it is part of our ongoing efforts to be more efficient and effective. And essentially what this allows us to do is take a look at our experience over the last 5 years. When are we getting calls for service, and where are we getting calls for service? And it gives us the ability to deploy our personnel more strategically. So we're looking forward to rolling that out. We should have, the software is up and running, and we're doing our analysis right now. We should probably be looking at an alternative deployment schedule sometime in the area of September, late August, early September. And then obviously we continue, as I mentioned, to do training. Not only are we doing training in the police department, but the police department recognizes our role in the overall city landscape. And we've done active shooter training with all of our city employees. In the coming year, we intend to do CPTED, or crime prevention through environmental design assessments of all city facilities. And we're going to take a look at all city facilities and see how we can make the security more robust and protect. One of our strategic goals this year is to improve the security of our employees, our guests, and our information. So that's going to be an effort to assist in that area.
Chief, you talked a little earlier about having over 300 something overdoses already. That Narcan that we purchased, what's that costing us? I'll ask the fire chief later on, but what's it cost? Do you have a cost associated with that? Are we ever going to be reimbursed through the feds or the state level for those?
I'll defer the question to our friends at the fire department, because we get the Narcan from them. We have applied for grants along with the fire department, and this is a tragedy. These overdoses are a tragedy, and I can tell you, I worked with our staff very closely to monetize, and it sounds like a cold thing to do, but we are a public entity and we are accountable for our tax dollars. So I wanted to know, what does it cost us to respond to these overdoses? You asked the fire chief earlier, and just in salaries alone, over the last 12 months, it's cost us $250,000 in responding to overdoses. And that doesn't include all of the crimes associated with it, the property crimes and things of that nature. Our experience with the opioid epidemic is nothing like I've ever seen before, and it's tragic. But I can tell you that we are continuing to work with partners in the medical community, and social workers. I'm on the Palm Beach County Heroin Task Force. And we are working to try to address this, but I can tell you that it will get worse before it gets better. There's no question about it. And that's one of the concerns that I have is in terms of our personnel and our staffing. Because, if we were to address this today, we would still be behind the curve, but we're looking at a budget for the next year. So what's it going to be like next year? We're almost at our experience in the first 6 months of 2017 of what our experience was in 2017. So it's definitely something to consider in the coming years as revenues increase. And actually, I've already covered that, so we can get through that. Does anybody have any additional questions?
My question is for the license plate reader cameras. Were there any of use this year? Could we use more?
They've been exceptionally helpful, and we appreciate the support in getting them. I can tell you, I think it was like a week ago, we recovered a stolen car from it. And they definitely they help. We can always use more, but we're fine with what we've got right now. My focus, quite honestly, as it relates to resources, would be personnel when we're able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Glenn Joseph, Fire Rescue. Before I get started, I just want to publicly congratulate my Deputy Chief, Greg Hoggett. He was just hired as the Fire Chief of Wyoming, Cheyenne. So he's a brand new Fire Chief, and 5 years of service, outstanding service. I'd like to get We'll miss him, but we'll try to soldier on without him. Congratulations, Craig. Well, this year's budget is stark, to say the least. Lori has cut and down to the bone.
I just felt the bus come
But
by.
we see, like she said, we have a 7.6% increase across all the divisions in the fire department. It's close to an 8.5% increase from 16 to 17. Majority of that, 8% out of the 8.6% is personnel costs. Operating costs have been minimal over the coming year. So, like we've talked about before, the pension costs and the other costs associated with personnel and the addition of the community standards to our department has increased the overall cost. We will make the adjustments and make things happen. But having said that, I'd like to thank the Commission for the 6 new firefighters. Came in handy. We put them in service July 10th. So Station 1 is now functioning as an independent, both fire and EMS. So we go into 100% transport. We started on April 1st, but we actually went to 100% in July 1st of this year. So we're moving in the right direction.
I need to ask a question. Flip back. Personnel services, $19,363, 15-16, and then in 17 it dropped. What happened? What did y'all do? What happened? Why was the decrease?
That was before me, but I'll let Tim.
Whoever could tell me.
16-17 was where we moved the people for fire life safety out of the fire department and into with community standards. So those wages came out between 15-16 and 16-17.
So where do we get our revenue from? We have contracts with Town of Ocean Ridge, Briny Breezes, Town of Hypoluxo, and the Village of Gulf. And these are the revenue that paid us contractually. 16-17 versus 17-18 is a 4% increase across the board, generally annually for each of those contracts. Our transport fees went from $2 million in 16-17 to we're estimating about $2.5 million this year. Actually, I let the manager know at the end of May we had just crossed over the $2 million mark. So we're anticipating moving up in the $2.5 million by the end of the year. Another source of revenue for us is the PEMT. It's a new program the federal government started about 2 years ago, which was actually approved in Florida in 2016. And what it is,
what does the acronym mean? PE?
Public Emergency Medical Transport reimbursement.
Thank you. We're not in the field, okay?
I understand. I was going to tell you, so that's why I just put it up there. I need to make the slides small. But anyway, so what that does is, because the federal government, like we talked about with our transport fees, realized that with Medicaid reimbursement, we're getting next to nothing and our costs are so high, they decided to come up with a program to help offset those costs to the public sector emergency providers. So we applied for it right away because of our budget situation, and in 2016-17 we were able to recover $204,000. We're estimating about $250,000 in this coming fiscal year.
Is this an annual thing that we have to apply for?
That's correct. We have to put in the money for it, the paperwork for it every year, and it takes. Since the first year was actually very difficult because we had to go through all the paperwork 2 or 3 times, but now that we're getting used to it, it will probably be able to do it a lot more quickly this time. In fact, the submission's coming in by the end of July. We'll have the submission already sent off
So
to the
it's
state.
more of an expected revenue?
It's an unexpected revenue source, and it helps us offset our costs for EMS only. It looks at vehicles, depreciation, portions of the fire station that's used for EMS, personnel costs, medical costs, and all. Anything that has to do with EMS transport, it's reflected in that number, and we get a portion of it back from the federal government through the state.
So it's not competitive, it's allocated for each department?
It's allocated based on use. So our numbers, our run numbers, the transports, that's where going to 100% transport will actually improve those numbers in the coming years. They're looking also in the future, cross our fingers, is that they would include the patients that are on the Affordable Care Act, the Affordable Care Operators, the regional areas from Medicaid uninsured patients. They're looking to include those as well, which is going to be a huge increase for us if that happens. But for right now, it's only Medicaid patients, and our estimate for 2017-18 is $250,000.
So this is a new revenue source?
Yes.
Brand new? That
Completely
we
new.
aggressively sought after. Very, very onerous process to qualify for the reimbursement. And that's what the chief said. It took us a little time to get there. But now that we're in the rhythm of how to prepare the mountain of data that they require, will be a nice, as long as it continues to be funded by the federal government, we will go after it every year.
And with the proposed health care bill coming out of the federal government, will that take away any of this?
As of right now, no, they have not said anything in that respect. I know the state legislature just increased it from 15 million to 25 million for the state. So we're looking to get actually more money next year coming forward, and that's going to reflect in that increase. Plus, the more patients we transport, the more funds we qualify for. So going to 100% transport is going to affect those numbers positively as well.
So, Chief, just educate me. So every time you pick up a patient, Medicaid patient, they take in consideration the personnel, the wear and tear on the truck and all, and they give you X amount of dollars for that?
That's correct. Okay. Because Medicaid is only reimbursing $190. We bill $680. It costs us $2,600 per call. So they're making up the difference for Medicaid calls. The fire and life safety fees for inspections, repeat inspections, and all that, we're looking at in 2016, $408,000. We're estimating about $413,000 in 17-18. We're going to look at our fees and see what we can do to adjust them, depending on how it falls out. We're comparing ourselves to all of the cities on the East Coast, and we approach the city manager to see what we can do to become more competitive, at least more comparable to the other departments our size doing the same work that we're doing. So we're in the process of doing that now. So our estimated revenue from outside sources, ALS transport, contracted areas, is for 17-18 is approximately $4,947,000 or $4.5 million.
Why are we losing money?
What's that?
Go back there. What? Oh, we're not losing money. All right. Okay.
Chief,
no, yes, sir.
Those cities that we provide service for, is there an escalating clause in our contracts with them?
That's correct. 4% per year.
4% per year.
And we just renewed contracts with Ocean Ridge and Briny Breezes for the next 12 years. 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, do we outsource any of our police to our surrounding cities?
Yes, Brighty
How come we
Breeze.
didn't see how much income we make from those? Chief, you forgot to tell us.
We generate about $200,000 a year in income from our contracted police services at the Brownie Breezes. We've done that for 1 year. This is our first year doing it.
Okay. Are there any potential cities coming on board or that we're in talks with or negotiations with?
Having some conversations with the town of Lantana on fire rescue. Their contract with the county expires at the end of the year, fiscal year, so we're putting together some numbers now to see if that's worth our while and their benefit to potentially expand our fire rescue services to the town of Lantana.
We can't afford protecting our own city. How's that going to work?
They pay us to do it.
It generates revenue. That covers costs at the least.
And she's talking about fire, not police.
Right.
So look at the calls. The total calls for 14, 15, 16, and now 17 are our estimate. We're looking at a 9% increase per year across the board. So every year we increase about 9% in the call volume. About 70 to 80% of these calls are EMS. And so the impact on heroin overdoses, for instance, in 2016 we spent about $11,500 on the Narcan, which is the antidote. In 2017, we've already spent $7,625. That's the end of June. And so far, we are on pace to have approximately 610 overdoses at a cost of, for medication only, not transport, not any other medication, any other cost, depreciation, vehicle use, $15,250.
Chief, out of that $7,000, out of those 305 overdoses, how much have you collected through those potential insurers?
Well, our insurer, most of the opioid overdoses, the people that are homeless, they don't have good insurance coverage. And when we get them, we're getting about 50% thereabouts of the insurance coverage, and we bill them at the cost of $680 per transport. So I couldn't tell you the exact how much of that money we've recovered. What I tell you is that our EMS billing staff is working double time and overtime to try to get as much of those recovered as possible. Again, you can see by the increase in the amount of funds that are recovered from ALS transports, from medical transports, that they're working really hard to make it happen.
So out of that $7,600, about 50% we've...
Yeah, for overdoses, yeah, about 40 to 50%. I couldn't tell you the numbers off the top of my head, but I could find out for you.
Chief, in total calls, 14, 15, 16, 17 only had 7,000. Is that a typo?
Year to date. So
year to date.
Year to date, end of June.
June, July, August, September, October. So
it's calendar year, by the way. So it's from January to the end of June.
So we're halfway through.
So we halfway through. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
We good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So inside the numbers for our community standards program, that includes fire and life safety, and you can see the numbers there. We're new buildings, new construction. So it takes a little bit of time to, we haven't had any personnel increase in that division for quite a while, but they're holding on, and we're a little bit behind right now in the inspections, the re-inspections, but we're making do. Again, we're going to look at all of our fees to see how we could, how we compare to the other cities in the east coast of Palm Beach County. And then if we have to make an adjustment, I'll approach the city manager to help us make that adjustment that's fair and equitable.
When you look at other cities, do you look at why don't you just look at Boynton, Delray, Lantana, or West Palm? I'm just saying.
We look at Palm Beach Gardens, West Palm Beach, Boynton Beach, Palm Beach County, and Delray Beach.
Well, that's not surrounding. Okay, go ahead. Do what you want to do.
Yeah, we can add Boca. That's easy enough to get.
Boca doesn't do existing, especially don't charge for it. So.
Oh, okay.
So
we don't want to compare to them.
Yeah, well, permit inspections and plans review they do charge for, and I do look at those numbers when we're doing the comparison. So what they charge for, we will compare.
All right.
But so we'll be discussing with the city manager and trying to get to try to increase our numbers a little bit to improve our revenue. So community standards is, again, they're brand new to the fire department. Yes, sir.
You're saying that you're going to try to increase your numbers or you increase the revenue. Don't go and pick on nobody just to increase the revenue.
Exactly. That's regressive, and so that's why the city manager and I are going to have a discussion. I'm sure she's going to discuss with you, and you have to approve any increases anyway, because they're in ordinance. So you'll have an opportunity to have input.
And I think a part of our review is how we structure or categorize our inspections.
That's correct.
Where we kind of do an across-the-board flat rate for an inspection of, say, a little print shop, and then that same inspection for a Publix, and they're getting charged the same. So it's kind of our methodology and how we structure it is what we're taking a look at.
All right.
Thank you. So community standards, can we move on? So we'll look at the complaints. Again, we've restructured the department. Out of the new director, Mark, he's doing an outstanding job. We've got, everybody's in the same place. We have a good employee morale. Complaints I'd like to see for the year, and the cases initiated, we're trying to reduce the amount of cases that goes to special magistrate. That's our goal, is to have some kind of intervention before we have to go to special magistrate to reduce the difficulty in resolving those cases. So we're working towards that goal. Next slide. So fire department is also really, really involved in the community, and we do a lot of good things in the charity events. We have a fishing tournament and chili cook-off with Commissioner Casella was one of our judges, and so was our HR director. And we raised $8,000 for the Kiwanis in the chili cook-off. MDA, we did the boot drive in February of this year, and we're able in March to donate $33,000 to the MDA fund. Golf tournament in October of 2016, we were able to raise $2,000 for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund. And of course, the Haitian relief from Hurricane Matthew, the fire department raised $2,000 of the $20,000 that was raised for that fund. Our total for this fiscal year is about $40,000 total we've raised for charity.
Car seat installations, you don't supply the car seats, so it's just...
The car seat installations, okay, well, I don't know if we're doing that. I know we donate some.
I know, years ago you did.
Yeah, we donate some. If you are not able, I remember now.
Yeah.
So how this program works is that you bring the car seat and we do the installation for you to make sure it's done correctly. If a family shows up and they don't have the funds to buy a car seat, then last year we donated 25 car seats. Now, when they come and do the installation, if they feel there's a cup there that says if you want to make a donation, they make the donation. That goes to the fund that buys those car seats for donation. So that's how that works. We did 433 car seats in 2016, and we did CERT members. We have 200 CERT members that are trained. We do regular, ongoing training with them. We do tests with the radio system. And during Hurricane Matthew in October, the program worked as advertised. We're able to, within 5 minutes of talking to our different CERT members from all parts of the city, get a damage assessment that took the rest of the city almost a whole day to verify that they were actually correct. So the program works, it works well, and it's a good program we should maintain. Yes, ma'am.
If I could do a sidebar for a second. Chief Katz, what programs do we have on the charitable end that we do in the police department?
As I mentioned, we do quarterly charitable events. Around Mother's Day, we do a diaper drive for mothers and children that are fleeing abusive relationships. We do that in partnership with ABDA. We do a school supply drive around summertime, coming up this time of year. We do a toy drive during the holidays, and we do a food drive around Thanksgiving.
Chief, I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but I would appreciate if you would share those things more, as Chief has done here with us. That way the public can see the good things that our police officers are doing, not just protecting us, but also doing the good things that don't really earn a paycheck sometimes.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
He said it before, he just didn't have any dollars to go with it, that's all. Go ahead.
He made me look bad last year, so I had to...
We're expanding our CPR program for all
Yes.
employees in the entire city. I'd love to see every employee certified.
We're just-
debating whether or not to make it mandatory, because I really think it's an important skill to have, and CPR has changed over the years since I was certified 15 years ago. It's very different now.
So we'll work with the HR department to make that happen, and we want to make it a voluntary program initially, and then we're going to make it, as the city manager directs, we'll make it a mandatory program for employees if that's the direction she wants to go.
And the Stop the Bleed training as well.
Stop the Bleed training, we're going to fold the programs into the same. We're going to CPR and Stop the Bleed. What Stop the Bleed does is that we have a lot of active shooter incidents around the country, and we've found through research that probably 80% of those people that died could be saved if somebody had a tourniquet and was able to stop the bleeding. So our goal in the next few months is to put a Stop the Bleed kit, which has tourniquets in it, in every AED location within the city facilities. And then we want to expand that in the community, but we want to get our home done well first. So we're going to train the employees with CPR, AED, and Stop the Bleed to make sure that everybody knows that if something bad happens, God forbid, that we are ready to respond in an effective way until the fire rescue and the police can interdict and put an end to the process. Another program that we are initiating right now, and with the help of the police department, community standard code enforcement, fire and life safety, and the firefighters, is Baby Sleep Safe. And what it is, we're training, about 3 hours of training that tells the responders what to look for if there's a baby that's less than 3 years old, where they sleep, because most of our babies that are less than a year unexpectedly died from SIDS. So we talk about taking toys out of their playpen and soft beds and blankets and those kind of things. So if they go on a call and they see a situation where the baby is not in a safe situation, we will do one of two things. We will either, if they can't afford to buy, we'll educate them, number one. Number two, if they can't afford to buy a playpen or sleeping area for the baby, we'll donate one at no cost to them. And then we'll refer them to the Baby Sleep Safe program, which is out of Bethesda Hospital. And there's going to be a social worker that goes and make contact with them to make sure they're trained properly on how to give the baby a safe sleeping environment.
That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, do we have any programs that potentially we want to start doing to help make parents more aware? Do we have, like, I think there are little alarms that we can give to parents when they have a child in the back seat, because apparently we had something recently where that happened here, I think in the city, where someone left a child in the back seat and they passed from being in the heat for too long. But are we looking into anything like that?
Well, one of the things that I kind of prefer is I like a national standardized program that's been developed by experts that we're not developing ad hoc. And
right.
as far as I know right now, there is no program for that particular problem. I know it's a tragic situation, but there's nothing. And I'd like to use a nationally recognized program before I don't want to do things ad hoc that may put us with some liable and some hazards. So I will keep my eye open. If I see something that addresses that problem, I will make sure to bring it to the city manager's attention so we could look at how we could implement it.
Thank you, Chief.
They have something
Yes, sir.
out that hangs on the mirror that says baby on board or something like that. Is that a national program?
I haven't seen it, but I will look for it, and I'll let you know if we find something that works.
Yeah.
So, just a couple other things that we've done in the last year that I want to highlight, because we hired a new training officer in last year, and I think it was in July, August last year. So he came with a lot of credentials, and what we were trying to do was to bring all of our training in-house, even for career path training that we usually send people out to colleges for. We could actually do the training in-house and save the tuition, make it on a flexible schedule that doesn't include overtime and all that stuff. So in the last year, we've actually trained about 200 hours of training for our internal personnel that would have saved the tuition at a tuition savings of over $22,000. We trained all of our new hires with using admin people, not overtime, not comp time or anything else, just admin people, with a huge savings in overtime costs, as well as giving them top-level training for this well-recognized, state-recognized instructor.
But the state recognized, they get certified?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they do. Yeah, he's a state-certified instructor with a master's degree, and so it's the same quality training I would get at a institution, but we'd bring it in-house to save costs and make it more efficient. And to address your question, Chief, we have one vacancy.
Thank you. What's that, chief?
Any question? Any questions?
No, I asked mine going through.
Great job, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing how it's 7:50, do we want to stop it now, or do we want to continue? I think the library closes at 8:30, so.
We need to stop. That's not going to be back at 9 o'clock.
That's all right. We have the library directed here hostage with us, so we're okay.
Yeah, I don't think we...
He's going to shut the lights off on us.
So,
I'm okay with continuing because I'd like to potentially finish if we can and not have to move into Wednesday. So if we can pack as much into today and tomorrow as possible, that would be better.
all right, so moving on to development.
Good evening, Andrew Mack, Director of Development. Do you have a brief presentation to go through here? Next slide. So in development admin, we're made up of 4 divisions: development admin, building, planning and zoning, community improvement. You have a summary here of the different increases by the divisions. The most notable increase here was in the building division, 9.3% increase. The total overall increase of the 4 divisions was roughly around 5.5% increase.
Andrew, you have any openings then?
Right now, we currently have a half a body opening in development admin, record specialist.
A half a body record specialist.
A part-time position, correct. Speaking of record specialist, that was one of the positions that we asked to reclassify from part-time to full-time. And when we're looking at positions, we always try and work collectively with the other departments to see if there's any efficiencies or joint partnerships where we can utilize employees. And one of these floated to the top, working with Jeff in the Public Works Engineering Division. We were able to look at sharing an employee, going from part-time to full-time, to gain those efficiencies to help us with our much-needed records requests in the department. Also, we're looking at the outsourcing, or included in our budget is the outsourcing of BTR certificate use licensing and printing and payment collection. We're looking at, for sure, anticipating the printing. We're also looking at the payment collection. We're still working with the vendor, but we're hopeful that that'll happen next fiscal year. And then,
Stop it.
Sure.
We do that outsourcing. Is the BTR, that's going to get rid of that individual?
This is actually the printing and the collection right now. It's not an individual person that does that. It's across a whole group of employees and other departments. Finance also assists us in that as well.
When are those going to be sent out?
We're hoping the renewals will go out within the next 2 weeks.
Okay. And that would be through the new outsourced provider?
The printing, for sure. We're still working with the provider. It's the same provider that Utilities uses, the Build to Pay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working with them on trying to make sure that our online system is working. So we're still flushing out some of the bugs in the system.
But all new applicants would have to go through the building department?
We're also looking at making our business tax online so you can submit as well. That's something else that we're collaborating with the Utilities Department on.
Okay.
In the building department, increase mostly revolved around personnel costs. We had some turnover in our department, the new hires, and then we also last year added the career path. So we have some new employees that are moving along that career path as well, and then pension costs as well. And when we're looking at our overall efficiencies and streamlining our business systems, we ask that we have the vendor that the city uses is Superior and also SunGuard to come in and review our processes and look at our systems to make sure we're using it to the fullest capability. So we have them coming in doing a business system analysis to assist us with looking at changes that we're making to our software. The other increase was in our outside contractual services. This is an outside vendor we use to help with our fluctuations in permit activity. So some of the successes, we have the daily online inspection schedules. We took our inspections. We used to generate a ton of phone calls internally from the external, and what we did was we scanned our schedules and put them online. So now individuals that, instead of calling, we've directed them to the online portal, and they're able to look at their inspections for the next following day. So that was a small change that generated big improvement in our process, not just from our customer service side, but in our workload as well. Another initiative that we did was streamlining of our exact changeouts. These are your water heaters, your air conditioning. We typically used to have those go back to a plan reviewer. We've added a step to create that as a sufficiency review, so that's a true turnaround that a person can walk in and walk out at the same time with a water heater and AC change out. These are exact for single family or townhomes. Adoption of the CRA redevelopment plan, obviously, we're still working through the implementation steps. We're working with the clerk to do the P&D board agenda and automation. Also working with finance and to add all the certificate of use to the business tax license. That's something that we're also looking at working on. And then last thing we did was we closed out our HUD project on Model Block, where we had the last houses that were constructed recently and with Habitat. Some of the challenges that we have, we work with balancing our customer service and personnel costs. We did ask for some additional bodies in the budget, and the manager, in discussions with her, we're hoping that in future years we'll be able to get an automation with the electronic, but balancing the customer service with personnel is a difficult thing in our department. One of the things that came up this year, and effective October, we're required by the state to have all of our building permit applications online, so that you're able to submit them online. So we're working with ITS, and the building division is trying to phase in that initiative. One of the other things that we're looking at that are challenges that we have is the antiquated technology. Again, this relates to our electronic plan review. Our enterprise system, I don't have the exact date, but I think it's running on 10 years or so old system. I mean, there's been incremental upgrades to the SIF work. Sorry. Upgrades to the technology, but we're still behind other cities like Wellington and Boca that have a fully automated electronic submittal process. So we're hoping that within next year that we'll be able to have that up and running.
Is what kind of expense to get it to have an electronic application submittal?
It depends, because we're also evaluating. That's a part of that having Superior come in and look at. We're also looking at packages that may include not just the building department, but may include fire and community standards. So it may be a more beneficial to upgrade to a complete new enterprise system. So that's something that we're evaluating with ITS and the manager. But just on its own, you're looking at like $250,000.
Okay.
But the system that we looked at in Wellington and in Boca, they've seen 70% reduction in customer service traffic from the counter. So there's a lot of efficiency, especially in the customer. They're not having to drive in, repeat trips to the counter. So it's a much better system. With that's pretty much all the stuff I have, unless there's specific questions and any line items.
Yeah, I have one years back, and I'm just saying I have not heard it lately, and that was that the building department was not a friendly department. I have not heard it this year, and I'm just saying I wanted to commend you all for knowledge when we go look for somebody,
Well, I appreciate that.
I haven't heard it. I'm just saying, thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll let Shane know. He works pretty hard in trying to make sure that we work in the most efficient and customer-friendly department that we have. So.
Hey, say that about the other two sitting over there. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Public Works. I think Jeff can do it in like a minute or so, right?
Jeff.
And then we'll head out.
Good evening. Jeff Livergood, Director of Public Works and Engineering. In the interest of time, I'll keep this less than an hour.
Before you go, how many openings we have?
Come on, I can go 2 hours, 7.
7 openings. That's
7.
Colin can do better than that.
Oh, yeah. Great. 7, we have 2 fleet mechanic positions vacant. 2 hires within the last 2 months that decided they could go elsewhere. 3 equipment operator positions in solid waste. 1 building maintenance mechanic and equipment operator in streets are our vacant positions. It's somewhat normal. With a department of 102 people, you always have turnover. And I'll point out that when you have promotions in solid waste, that always has a vacancy effect as you're promoting through the range. Public Works budget, I'm going to do like I've done the last couple of years. I'm going to talk about all of our divisions, including the enterprise division, so we don't have to do that tomorrow. Briefly, the dollars on the slide, we see a 30.7% decrease in Public Works administration. The administration division is basically me. The Facilities Management Division is the division that maintains our buildings, an 8% increase. The Streets Division, obviously, it's fairly well named. It's a 9.5% increase. But I'd like to point out one thing. Of the $1.2 million budget for the Streets Division, this is a quiz. Does everybody remember what's $600 and some thousand of that? 5%. Street lighting. So when you look at a street maintenance budget of $1.2 million, $640,000 of that is our cost FPL. I've got some comments on that in a few minutes.
Could you explain the 223 to 154 decrease?
The Christine, the decrease? Yeah, I'll get to it in a minute when I'm just going to summarize them all briefly. I'm just showing you the quick numbers here. Because that's really where the fun part begins. Go ahead, Tony. Parks and Grounds Division's a 1.8% increase. Cemetery and Mausoleum, it's decreasing despite the number of customers increasing.
Excuse me, why is that decreasing? I'm just saying, because, with perpetual care, I'm just saying there's so much that we're supposed to keep aside for perpetual care that's mandated. I'm just saying, are we meeting that goal?
Yeah, we've got that number and we'll get it. It's nothing that's really related to increased reduction in services or maintenance costs. The Solid Waste Division has 11.7% decrease and Fleet Maintenance has a 33%. And we'll get to some of the highlights if Tony will go to the next screen. The Public Works Administration, a $68,000 decrease. That comes from the elimination of the Assistant Director of Public Works position. Many of you may remember Christine Roberts. She retired this year. We're not replacing her position specifically as an Assistant Director. The Facilities Management Division of $150,000 increase is a reallocation of the Senior Project Manager from engineering to facilities. The Senior Project Manager, if you know him, is Kevin Ramsey. He was budgeted in the prior year in engineering. He's moving into facilities.
What does he do?
He manages the whole facilities division and manages projects as we build them. He's a very integral component when we start talking the surtax dollars.
What's a project? Give me an example. I'm just saying.
Any project that you see in the field, from a bathroom remodeling to park construction to a playground to an air conditioning system in a building to anything that you'll be seeing in your surtax capital list. In the facilities division, we're working towards creating positions to manage the surtax. We don't just immediately throw in $4.2 million worth of capital work without an influx of new staff to do that. One of the things we'll be doing is reclassifying a supervisor in that division who is a project manager extraordinaire. And through a number of series of other reclassifications of employees, we're going to be able to manage the projects better. In doing so, we're going to be eliminating a building maintenance mechanic position. And this is where, in our facilities division, we're going to have 2 to 3 years, not just this year, but the next 2 to 3 years, to think about our staffing levels and facilities, and that's a challenge that I wanted to talk about in a bit, but while I'm on this division, I will. Because we not only have the surtax that's going to be contractually working and repairing a number of items that this division repairs and can restore, but we also have the Town Square project that's coming along that's going to replace a number of aging buildings. So in the next 3 years, we're going to need to take a good look at the facility staff to see how we utilize those strengths that they have and the skills that they possess, compared to what those workloads are going to be in future years. And we're going to have to plan from that from years 3 to 10 as it relates to the surtax. In the streets division, we have a $107,000 increase, and that's reallocation of a crew supervisor and some additional electric expense that's anticipated. The FPL is going up, we believe, about $40,000. I'll talk a little bit about FPL in a minute. In the engineering division, obviously, if we've transferred a senior project manager for facilities, we're going to go down there. And some of the increase back, as Andrew noted, is a shared administrative associate with development. Tony, if you could go. Parks and grounds, we're creating 2 new crew members. It was listed elsewhere as a TLC crew. That was an $80,000 increase. The net increase in the parks and grounds, because we were able to save some dollars and other miscellaneous line items, is about a $54,000 increase. TLC crew, let me describe that for you so that you have a good idea of what that is. It's as simple as it sounds, tender loving care. When you have maintenance crews within a public works department, those crews are routinely assigned to set tasks. For example, if you're a parks maintenance employee, you know that every Monday you're going to be at Intracoastal Park, you're going to be at City Hall, you're going to be at Congress Barrier Free Park on South Congress. You're going to have those assigned tasks that are routine, that are crew activities. And when you have a crew of 4 always depends on a crew that size. When you try to throw additional tasks over and above what would be typical maintenance, it can become very problematic, because if you're taking a crew and you say, boy, we want to fix this planting bed, or we want to paint this door, you're taking that crew away from work that they may be doing elsewhere that afternoon. So in developing the 2 additional employees, Lori and I have talked for a number of years that we want to develop a process that puts the wow into the factor into what the public sees. Everything that we do is about perception. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I was working with a ground supervisor out at Intracoastal Park prior to 4th of July event. And we were standing in front of the clubhouse on the west side of the island. I said, all right, your scope of vision, when you look at the clubhouse, what do you see? Saw the island, saw the planting beds in front of the clubhouse, saw some ugly rusted signs. Those are the types of things that we're going to take care of with the TLC crew. They'll be the ones that will fix the rusted signs, paint whatever they need to paint, and they'll work with that line of sight where the public sees things the most. When the public gets out of their automobiles on the sides of Intracoastal Park, up next to the wall that's private that needs to be painted, they may not necessarily notice as much. If another analogy is the entrance to City Hall. That will be where there will be the added detail on the maintenance. It's basically where the eyes of the public are the most and what they see the most, which means as we do these repairs, we're going to be in people's way. Because if we're repairing where the people are, and if we're maintaining and we're sprucing up, we'll be where they'll be. It's much like when you go to Disney and they have an area closed. This area is being, changed refurbished for your future development. We're going to be doing that. We may be pressure washing, we may be painting, we may be planting, we may be cleaning restrooms on a more frequent basis, we'll be cleaning pavilions after they've been used. These 2 employees will not necessarily just be assigned to the grounds crew. We're going to share them with the facilities crew. I will be involved in their task assignments so that we can remove them from their daily crew assignments so that they won't be assigned to that. The solid waste, does anybody have any questions on that real quick?
Yeah. It was brought up a little earlier. One of the, Harry there in the crowd brought up about pressure washing some of these paving crosswalks. They haven't been done in 20 years, and I know it's DOT and we don't own them and all, but can we still walk? Can we pressure wash these walkways?
We can do very small areas with this crew to pressure washing. In dealing with Mr. Woodworth a couple of years ago, they wanted to do a lot more pressure washing. We agreed on all of Federal Highway and Boynton Beach Boulevard. When you get to that volume, it's best to contract it. But yes, on some of these isolated areas where you have high volumes of pedestrians, definitely those are the types of things that this crew will take care of that the public sees. Now, we may talk about it in capital, but when you talked about the federal highways going to be resurfaced, we've already asked the DOT at the intersections of Ocean and Boynton Beach Boulevard remove the pavers and replace them with stamped asphalt. Less trip hazard, easier to maintain, and I think it looks better. So that'll get rid of some of that ongoing maintenance. But yes, that's the type of thing that this crew would do.
We initially started with it's really a crew of 3, but in an attempt to salvage at least some part of it with the budget, we eliminated 1, so we can start with a crew of 2 to get out and do these things.
And so we welcome ideas. I have a list probably of 50 places I want this crew to start, just to make minor changes in what the public sees. And hopefully the public will notice it. In the solid waste division, because we eliminated the assistant director of public works, we lost a key component of leadership in the solid waste division. So we're going to add a solid waste manager. I'd point out that the solid waste manager existed 7 or 8 years ago in our budget, along with 3 other supervisory employees in the solid waste division and the assistant director of public works. So this calls for adding back in the solid waste manager. That's a critical position now, probably more so than any time in my 16 years here with the city, because we're balancing equipment, people, and in a little bit I want to talk about some technology. Also in the solid waste division, we've talked about decreasing the general fund transfer. We've decreased the vehicle purchases, so that's one of the reasons the budget went way down. Remember last year we bought 4 new vehicles. That added up to about $900,000, so obviously we're not buying those this year.
What 4 new vehicles being bought?
2 automateds, a rear load, and I believe recycling.
Are they working?
They're not here yet. They're all due within the next 30 to 45 days. They take 6 months to build, so they take a while to get here. So we're hoping to have them within the next 45 days because they've been on order a while.
All right, let me question the lemon that we bought. What's happening with that?
The lemon, we're not supposed to talk about the lemon that we bought is being replaced by the vendor. It should be in within 30 days. We're having the vehicle that was, it was a cherry picker, I believe it's being put on a new cabin chassis. So
Okay.
that's
The
being
reason
done.
I said something, Jeff, and I'm not trying to be facetious, I get a lot of phone calls, why isn't my trash picked up, they missed a day, are they coming later, and I have to answer, and then, so this is what I'm trying to get a handle on, so I can tell people,
You are absolutely right, and that's why we added the 4 employees, and that's why we've added the vehicles. And Tim also alluded to the fact that we've changed our replacement cycle from 7 to 5 years. That is going to slowly be implemented over the next 2 to 3 years. We're not immediately jumping at it because the fund can't afford to do that. You can't fix 8 years of ills in a 1-year period. We just simply can't afford to do it. The $1 increase won't do that. Successes that we had this year in 16-17, we did add to the fleet in the staffing. That's helping. I said the collection day, the delay is decreasing. When I wrote this slide, that was true. We've had some problems in the last week or 2. I guess we just go in phases. We had a couple of months where we just had no problems at all. Landfill monitoring and closeout is proceeding well. I could show you all the reports if you'd like to see them. They actually are kind of boring, but when you talk about the closeout, we're talking about groundwater monitoring and the landfill gases. So if you remember those two, we had roughly $700,000 of expense in the current year budget that hopefully we're not going to have next year.
Jeff, didn't we have to replace some of that liner?
We did already. We did. That's been repaired. The cap has been repaired. The groundwater monitoring has been... Groundwater monitoring is probably the most key element because that way we're going to get out of any future monitoring at all, and then we can ultimately say we're out of the landfill business and walk off into the sunset when that happens.
Didn't we have a methane gas issue up there?
We do have a methane gas issue. The latest readings that were all below limits. So we need several months more progress in that regard, but we're moving very well in that direction.
Do we still monitor the water at the golf course for arsenic?
That's one of the processes that we're doing with the groundwater monitoring. We put additional wells at the golf course as part of the landfill process to determine how much of the arsenic is naturally occurring. And the hydrogeologists, and these guys are PhDs, they are really wicked smart. They're developing their theories, and I think we're moving very positively.
Jeff, have we done a carcinogenic study out there on that landfill?
On the landfill, we've evaluated the methane gases. We've evaluated the groundwater for materials that are not typically associated with groundwater. So if that's your question, a carcinogenic, not necessarily, but we've monitored for everything that would be required by the DEP.
Because we had a landfill in Fort Lauderdale, I'm just saying, and they have problems now, so that's why I'm concerned.
Yeah, we are too, and that's why, each time we've gone to you, we've talked about taking a very proactive approach, and this city has. The DEP and the County Health Department are very pleased with what we've done to try to close this out. Remember, everything that we're trying to close out was done starting in the 1950s. So, we're trying to fix the way that society worked 50 to 70 years ago, and it's tough.
Jeff, real quickly, how many acres is that landfill?
40.
40 acres. And what is the long-range plans once we close it out?
I'm thinking the first ski slope in Florida.
I'm thinking about another 9 at the Williams Golf Course.
Yes. That's not my specialty, Commissioner. Didn't take that class.
Right. Commissioner, we are going to be looking next year at, if Jeff can get the landfill closed, we're going to be looking at what uses it could be for the golf course expansion, possibly to actually increase revenues at the course. So absolutely, we're talking to a couple of experts right now, see if they're interested in coming in and giving us some free advice.
Right.
So,
Or a for sale sign would work nicely.
yeah, that also is the other option.
We'll give
Not
away.
in our corporate limits.
And lastly, the successes, the capital projects have been matched or developed to match the surtax, and we'll talk about that when we do capital. That'll only be a 2-hour discussion. The challenges for this year are balancing those staffing levels like I talked in facilities. We start this year thinking what the facility staffing is going to look like. The vehicle inventory, we are always looking at to make sure we have the right number of vehicles for the right job at the right place, so we don't have heavy pieces of iron sitting around and only moving 2,000 miles in a year. And solid waste route balancing. One of the things that we can do is change routes to better balance our days, to help even our days out. We try not to do that. That's a last resort, because when you start messing with people's collection days on a permanent basis, that tends to be unpopular. Initiatives in 17, 18, and this is where I want the solid waste manager to help me. We've looked at an automated vehicle location system for solid waste vehicles, and it comes with that a routing software. We've built that into the budget. It's going to be an expense of about $80,000 per year.
Is that a GPS unit on each truck?
It's a GPS unit on each truck, but the GPS unit gives you nothing but the location. The routing software is the real key. It allows the truck to, or the supervisor to know where the truck is at any time. It allows the supervisor to reassign another truck automatically to fill somebody else's route. They don't have to do it through the radio. It just automatically goes to the computer screen in the truck. So a driver may think he's done, and he looks at his screen, he goes, wow, I got to go to the south end of town and do these other 208 homes. The software will allow us to document anomalies. A truck pulls up to the front of somebody's house at 8:30 in the morning and the garbage isn't out. The truck will automatically take a photograph of the home, because that's one of our common complaints, that our garbage isn't out. And we always go back. We have a lot of problems with dumpsters that are blocked at restaurants when our truck services. And so we'll be able to document that, and it's better to help their customers so that they understand what our difficulties are. So it's going to be a nice system to use. The Other initiatives are FPL street lighting. Don't know if you're all aware, but the Public Services Commission passed a rate structure to allow conversion of all the high-pressure sodium FPL lights into LED. We've already begun the discussion with FPL. We're doing an entire inventory of our system. I will be determining what the wattages should be for each fixture. And hopefully over a period of 12 to 18 months, we'll be able to convert everything to LED. We should save 20% or so on that $640,000 electric bill for street lighting, so it should be pretty significant.
And
So
Jeff, is
while we're-
that going to be the same lighting or color light, or is it going to be a different color?
It's going to be a different color light. The light it's a bit wider. But the more important issue is going to be the fixture wattage. And that's where we come into play, whether it's going to be the equivalent of 100 or 150 or 200 or a 400 watt fixture when you think of the old high pressure sodiums. Over the years, a lot of fixtures have been placed out into the city, and maybe somebody complained loud enough and they wanted a very bright fixture that maybe shouldn't be there today. Because sometimes when you get light in dark places, it's very difficult to drive. So I'll be taking a look at the wattages of all the fixtures.
Jeff, aren't they figured out through candle power? Isn't that how the formula works? Not so much by wattage?
No, it's lumens is how that they're determined for the lighting output. And it's as much that as the type of lens. They use a cutoff lens to give a particular lighting pattern from the lens itself onto the pavement. Now we have some options with different luminaires or different fixtures. Of course, the decorative fixtures are much more costly. Now they're just going to be replacing the standard fixture on the mast arm. You could do a nicer looking fixture just because we want to and throw that $120,000 cost savings down the drain. So my belief is we should get the best price fixture at the best power
Not to get
consumption.
off message, but when we do this town square project with LED in mind?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there we'll put some more decorative fixtures in our central business district.
Stuff, I hope.
If we can, undergrounding is very, very, very expensive.
Right, I know, but isn't that what we have in mind for Town Square?
Town Square, everything will be underground.
Exactly, that's
Yes,
what I'm saying.
it will be.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Jeff, let me ask you a question in regards to the illumination. Will it make them brighter? I'm just saying, because we see places where we say it's too dark. I'm just saying.
I believe that it will be brighter, but we need to be very careful, because when you're driving on a public roadway, you don't want to go from very dark to very bright to very dark to very bright. You try to level out your lighting levels. But at the location of the lighting level, yes. Now we're going to be concentrating on keeping the lighting levels on the public roadway. It's not our job to illuminate private property. And it's tough to illuminate private property with the street light anyway. The lenses just aren't made for that.
Roadway.
Yeah, just roadway.
Okay.
Jeff, why is it that when I drive off of 95 going east on Woolbright, that whole strip is dark?
I don't know, unless it's part of the I-95 project.
No.
Okay,
When
I'll
you're
check.
coming off the bridge going east, basically from the ramp east to about Seacrest, that whole
There has to be an
roadway is
entire
dark.
circuit off. I wasn't aware of it.
Okay.
I'll check it. And when you're driving around town, here's one of the other cool things, and I don't know if the memo got to you. When you look at all of the existing light fixtures, you'll see a little, looks like a hockey puck on the top of it. That's on every light now. That does two things. It's a photocell to turn the light off and on time of day. But it also now senses whether or not the light is burnt out, and it sends a signal to FPL home office that the light is no longer functioning. So think of all the times where we've had our residents call us, say the street light at this intersection has been burnt out for 3 weeks. FPL automatically knows. I've noticed that it's worked because I've had a major reduction.
Well, maybe they didn't get the memo on Woolbright.
That's what I'm saying, because they're out. And Boynton Beach Boulevard the same way.
One of the questions on why the budget on the cemetery was reduced, the other contractual services, we're not paying the surveyor again this year.
Wait, spit it out again.
The other contractual services in the cemetery, you ask why that we're going down. We don't have the land surveyor costs again that we did for the replatting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why it's a reduction over the prior year.
Okay.
Any other questions? Tim, you guys didn't mind that I did the enterprise?
No, that's good. Thanks.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Want to keep on? All right. Moving on to recreation.
Yep.
Okay, good evening. Wally Majors, Recreation and Parks Director. Our presentation is fairly straightforward. Our general fund is definitely increasing, and I'll expand on that. Our program revenue fund is the fund that we use to capture all the revenues and related expenses associated with any program that generates revenues. That is going down, and that's reflective of the fact that, among other things, as you well know, we are going through some big changes in the department, and we are losing the Art and Civic Center, which are two facilities that it's short-term, but still generate quite a bit of revenue for us. And so we are going to be dealing with making some adjustments there. But what I wanted to focus on is
When do you expect our facility to go offline?
Pardon me?
When do you expect us not to be able to use the art facility?
Yeah, as part of Town Square, we're looking at that building is probably March timeframe. We are going to try to find as much temporary space as possible to move all those programs into. We just can't guarantee all of them. So we're anticipating conservatively some programs we won't be able to offer for a very short period of time. But if we do our job well, we'll be able to offer them all, just in different places.
Okay, you have a lot of administrative personnel over there. You already got places located?
We do. We have places to locate all the administrative people.
Oh, thank you, Colin. As it relates to our general fund, we are definitely looking at some increases. One is, as a result of the pool, we make some fairly significant adjustments there to accommodate the additional public swimming hours, and as you know, those are free of charge. And with that being the case, we are just not able to generate quite as much revenue as we have in the past. And the other big change that we are recommending is the additional full-time ocean lifeguard. When I was appointed director in 2000, the operation at the beach was managed by 9 full-time ocean lifeguards. For the past 5-6 years, we are down to 7. And quite honestly, it's really creating a hardship on our staff. We need a minimum of 4 people on duty all the time, and especially when we have somebody that's out sick or is hurt or on vacation, it becomes a major problem for us, because then our ocean rescue chief, in essence, has to then spend most of his time on a lifeguard stand, and it really becomes very difficult for him to do his job, which, among other things, involves the training and the professional development of our lifeguards. The other major challenge that it's created is the fact that, generally speaking, when you have training for your lifeguards, they like to train as a team. We are not able to do that because our lifeguards now have to work 8-hour days, and those days are all on the lifeguard stand other than the break that they get for lunch. It is a working lunch, and within that 8-hour time frame, they are still required to get their physical training. The big problem occurs with us trying to maintain our certification. Our beach staff are USLA certified, United States Lifeguarding Association. To do that, we have to basically train, among other things, twice a month outside of the 40-hour work week. That means that twice a month we're paying our lifeguards overtime to meet our training requirements. It's just too difficult to continue to do that, and I give my ocean rescue chief all the credit in the world, because he's been able to basically pick up this slack on his shoulders for the last several years, and quite honestly, the man probably works 20 to 26 weekends out of the year because he's asked to cover for other people. So I can't continue to punish him like this. He needs the relief. And again, going from 9 to 7, I think we gave it We gave it our all, but quite honestly, it's just becoming far too difficult to do that. And for me to pay overtime twice a month just to meet training requirements is just not a good way to operate that
Well,
beach.
is there a liability factor in this if we don't have enough lifeguards or a certain amount of lifeguards that we need?
It can be, but we've alleviated that because of the fact that the Ocean Rescue Chief has been able to pick up the slack. We have been able to kind of squeeze the training in, the physical training during the week. So we're meeting the standards, but it really becomes very challenging. For example, this year I had 2 guys out on extended sick leaves. I have some veteran lifeguards, which we'd like to have. You know, we can train lifeguards, but when you're dealing with ocean rescue, you're dealing with the fact that veteran staff really make a big difference, because you have to be able to read that ocean, you have to be able to respond, and certainly we can bring in new lifeguards and train them, but our veteran lifeguards are very essential to the operation. But then the veteran lifeguards are the ones that have been around long enough that they do have vacation time that they've earned. They do have occasion where they have to be out sick because they you know, there's a lot of wear and tear. And I can tell you again, in the 17 years that I've been presenting the budget for this department, I've never asked for a full-time position, because, you know, I really felt that it was necessary to really make sure that if we needed somebody, I could sit here and give you facts that would support that. And I have an abundance of facts. I don't want to, you know, linger too long on it, because there are some other things that I have to discuss with you guys tonight. But I can tell you this is one position that I want to fight very hard for, because I believe that these people deserve it. We have between 10 and 15,000 people that visit that beach every month. And these guys average between 150 to 200 responses a month. That means they are coming off their guard stand and they're preventing people from getting in the ocean, or they're doing first aid, or they're doing some other things that are required to keep our patrons safe. And those numbers are quite high if you consider the fact that, you know, you got 30 days in a month. That beach never closes. It's open Christmas Day, it's open Thanksgiving, it's open Memorial Day. Those guys work hard every day. So I don't want to beat this up too much, but I hope I've made my point. This is a position that we really, really hope that we can to add to our ocean rescue staff.
So we need one additional full-time ocean lifeguard.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we send the budget back. Tell Lori not to take it out then. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. And lastly, the one thing I want to share with you guys is in regards to special events. This year, the fireworks was held on the Saturday preceding July 4th. Next year, July 4th falls on a Thursday. The preceding Saturday is June 29th. June 30th, I'm sorry, and the following Saturday is July 7th. As far as staff is concerned, quite honestly, just like I reported last year, for staff, we'll deal with it. The weekend is challenging for us because during the week, at least we are able to tap into some of our seasonal staff. So the added day during the week is somewhat challenging, but bottom line, staff is here to serve the public, and ultimately it's what's best for the public. So we'll deal with whatever the commission wishes to do. So it's not till 2020, July 4th, that July 4th falls on a Saturday again. So on July 18th, for 2018 and 2019, it falls in the middle of the week. But we would like to have the commission give us some feedback, because among other things, this year we have to go back out to bid for the fireworks, and we'd like to have that item as part of our big package where we can tell the vendor that this is what we plan to do. And include in our bid process is the fact that if we are rained out, we do allow to have us a rain date as it relates to the July 4th event or the fireworks event. So I would like to get some feedback from the commission in terms of what day you would like to host the fireworks event next year and the following years.
When you think about that, flip back to that screen that you went away from without going over to some things that you should have. New equipment. Okay, scan card ID systems for Hester and SEM Center. Is this only going to be for those two centers, or are we going to do it citywide?
Well, we have it the Senior Center right now, sir.
I know.
So that would be the Sims and Hester Center.
Coastal Park?
Oceanfront Park, no, we really don't.
There's no center. Coastal.
There's no center.
There's no building.
There's no, The staff we have there is primarily for registration. We do have some programs, but the only staff I have there, people that are coming in for like a rental for a wedding ceremony, a special event. I have a few classes in there, but not enough to really support the need for that, whereas at both Sims and Hester, as you know, we have a lot of walk-in traffic.
All right, that's good. Let's stay with Sims and Hester. Will that be a charge to the citizens who will use this facility with a card?
I would recommend that we charge people who don't live in the city like we do at the senior center. But for residents, I wouldn't think of a charge would be necessary unless the commission would like to consider that an option. But at the senior center, as you know, residents don't have to pay a fee. Non-residents do pay a fee, though.
Right. This is what I'm just saying, if it's going to be a city facility, citizens that live in the city should not be charged a fee to use.
But we'd also like to know if somebody comes up from Miami and wants to use our facility, then there should probably be some cost for that.
Let me ask another question, because I know a lot of times y'all generate revenue for programs like y'all charge them like to go in and play pool or something, that's some other little things that they do. Will this card get them in so they will not have to pay to use that center?
Certainly that could be something that we consider as an option, absolutely.
Okay, I like
and we
that.
do that with a lot of programs at the senior center. It depends on the program. But
some at the senior center, they have to pay $10 even if they are a citizen. So I'm just saying, I want this to be set up. I'm just saying, so if a child comes in and he cannot pay the money, I don't want him to be penalized, for not using the facility.
We'd never turn any child away.
That's what
never have, never will.
Okay.
Well, what's wrong with the score clock at the Hester Center?
The one inside the gym, it's old.
Does it work?
It barely works, but I can tell you that's one of those things that we have a very strong relationship with the Wildcats, and the Wildcats and I have already talked about them coming together with us and maybe doing a fundraising for those kind of things.
I understand that. We just paid $50,000 for a new football thing, and we're spending, I think, over $250,000 doing some interior work down the Hester Center windows, walls, and the whole building. So going back to the fee structure, how do we pay for these things these improvements?
These are general fund improvements.
General fund improvements, and we're talking quite a bit of money here for one particular center. So I have no problem charging a minimal fee to help pay for some of these upgrades that we're doing. And if a score clock at a basketball is working, it works. It either works or it doesn't work.
Right.
Not barely working. So I'm not in favor of putting money towards a new basketball clock at this particular time if it's working. And how many basketball games do we have down there?
Quite a few, and that's why I added to the fact that I would like to see the Wildcats, who are a common user of that facility, play a role.
Some fundraising.
And for some fundraising.
But we've just spent so much money at the Hester Center. We just did the press box all over, new windows. We did it a second time after the windows were broken. We just made improvements to the school, $50,000 for a new scorecard, and I think we got over $250,000 of repairs going through windows and doors and interior walls.
So my concern is that the Hester Center was built in the early 90s.
92.
And that there has not been any sort of rehabilitation to that building since then?
We've made, 92 was the first phase, then we had additional phases over the latter part of the decade, and the last of which was in 2000 where we enclosed the breezeway.
I know I went there for early voting. I know that it needs the work. I'm very excited for the fitness equipment. That stuff looked like it was from the 90s. As for the basketball score clock, it's not a $55,000 charge like the football.
I'm sorry, sir.
What is the cost for the score clock?
Approximately, because it's indoors, I'd say $5,000 to $7,000, $8,000. I'd like, if we can work it out, and if it is approved, I'd like to get one for each of the behind each backboard.
Okay.
And part of the hope is to be able to accommodate activities that would help offset that cost. Basketball tournaments. The basketball league is doing not bad, but that's one of those things where I think we probably can attract additional activities with some improvements. But the score clocks that are there now go back to when the building was opened in '92.
And someone was talking to me about like indoor soccer. With the,
Possibly indoor soccer. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, pickleball is another great program up there. We have 75.
And do they use the score clocks?
No, they use the basketball courts.
No, but they don't use the score. I'm for the additional $5,000 or $10,000 for the score clocks. I think that's facilities necessarily for the community, and so upgrading it will definitely benefit the community.
Wally, how much money is in the current Parks and Recs budget to put aside for the potential Quantum Park Eco Park?
In the budget for development of the park, we don't have any money in the budget for.
Okay, so I know this is something that I'll probably bring up at some point in the next 24 hours, that, you know, we do, as Commissioner Excel pointed out, expend a large amount of money, if not exclusively, on one side of the town, and there's limited opportunities, I think, on the other side of the town, because there's not as many facilities. But in the event that we're able to show mutual respect to the residents of both sides of 95, I think this commission should try to find money for you to put away a little bit to show that we're invested in that, developing that park, and whatever other funds we'll receive, you know, from private entities, we can show that we've got some skin in the game. So,
and I did allocate $50,000 in our Park Impact Fee Trust Fund for parks planning. That's just basically out there for, you know, we don't try to, as staff, decide what we're going to do next. We like to work with our advisory board. We like to take feedback from the community. Yeah, as you probably remember, every 5 years we do a comprehensive needs assessment. But this year I put $50,000 in that trust fund specifically for items like you're discussing. Because ultimately, when we talk to parks planning, the first step is to create a conceptual plan, an idea potentially what it could work with. Now,
Well, that's been done already for the quantum site through the QPod.
There might be other sites that come up for future discussion. And
But for ECO, it's already been done, so you wouldn't need to
Let
spend
me
it.
ask a question. In the Park Impact Fee Fund, how much money is in that?
The current balance is, I believe, about 500,000.
I have to check and let you know.
Yeah, we'd have to double check.
Okay, while you checking, just tell me something else. What can that money be spent for? Because I'm just saying, if something big money that you need it,
Right.
then you got funds set aside.
Park improvement, park development, parks planning.
Thank you. Go ahead now. Funds.
But are there limitations on where, like,
At first,
the
we
regional
have to
impact?
focus on the area from which it was collected. So, for example, if we have a residential development project in the northwest part of our city, and for which we collect a park impact fee, the first place we have to look to spend that money is within that area. If we find that there is no need in that area, then we can use that money for a more regional or a district park. And a good example of that is the money that we're investing for the improvements at the Barrier-Free Park. That's a district park, and by that we mean basically people have to drive to it as opposed to just walk to it. So in that case, we were able to use park impact fee money to do that. We did the same thing when we bought the new scoreboard for the Hester Center football field. That was a regional or district park. So we were able to justify using $50,000 to make an improvement to that park.
Renaissance comment. I know we get impact fees. I'm just saying builders fees from that. What can that money be used for?
Again, park improvement, park
Would that be
development.
used for that potential eco park we've been talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently, we've used it to put shade covers over playgrounds, and, you know, so we do try to use it from year to year. This year, we set monies aside for parks planning. I think there certainly has been enough talk where we felt if there was somewhere where we felt there was enough interest to generate a conceptual plan, we can do that. But that's the emphasis is on conceptual plan, because, you know, Jeff gets very nervous when we start talking parks development, because we have to try to make sure we can maintain what we got. And I always want to make sure people understand that. Our first priority should be, let's maintain what we got. And then if we're going to talk development, we have to make sure that we know how we were going to maintain that.
Well, you didn't maintain history. That's why it fell apart. I'm just saying with all the rain and stuff. So please don't give me that as an excuse. I'm just saying, we need the bodies for the park. I'm just saying, and we need to start giving the northwest section, because I'm kind of tired about the northeast is always getting everything. I'm saying, let's be fair. I'm just saying, you got money set aside and everything. It's just sitting there, use it.
So if I may I ask the commission to give us some feedback regarding the fireworks event?
Right, so regarding the fireworks event, I remember the reason I thought we moved it was because staff mentioned potentially that it was difficult to do it during the weekday because it was tough for staff to wake up the next morning and go to work, and then for
Let me
families.
clarify that. No, it's because we got feedback from families that had children that asked us to consider it.
Okay.
From a staffing standpoint, it adds no difference to us. We will do whatever.
Except for the fact that you just said that.
The weekend is a little tougher for us because it extends the week. When it's in the middle of the week, we're able to use like seasonal staff to help us with a lot of the little tasks and duties that are associated with the event. But if it's on a weekend, we're used to working weekends. So for us, from a staffing standpoint, it's a neutral thing. We'll make it happen no matter what day you guys choose. But we need to know what day you choose because we're going out to bid, and we'd like to be able to tell the vendor that's going to bid on the fireworks for next year to know when we're going to do it.
Let me ask a question.
It's obvious with those 3 dates, I think you want to go with the 4th of the holiday because you don't want to celebrate Independence Day in June.
June 30th is a nice day.
Or a week after.
Well, that's
June
what I
30th
heard
sounds good to me.
with Commissioner McCray. You want to go?
Yes, thank you. In regards to the fireworks on July, whatever day, Saturday you all had it, was Boynton Beach the only municipality that had it on that day?
No.
Who was? Who else?
In Palm Beach County area?
I gave, in Palm Beach County, I don't know that there was that many. We looked statewide.
I'm not worried about statewide. It's Palm Beach County.
I don't know that there were any.
Okay, and the next thing is, while I'm on this firework thing, it used to be years ago, we used to get money from Ocean Ridge. I'm just saying they would give money towards the fireworks. I'm just saying, is anybody reaching out to them because they sit on their balconies and enjoy the fireworks? I'm just saying,
We could certainly ask them. I know I contacted Jamie Titcom, who's the town manager, about the fact that we were inquiring about their level of support in the past.
Which was minimal, and then they stopped it because there's, I think, that was at least 15. How long ago?
2007.
Yeah.
It was still when the CRA was
Predates me.
running
It's
the
a good
event.
10 years. Yeah, it's at least 10 years.
It was the recession.
I mean, we'll certainly ask, but I can almost 99.9 tell you they'll say no.
Because I was on the commission and we made a decision. We tried to get money. I don't think it was 10. It was less than 10 years.
It was while the CRA was still organizing the event. So we took it, the Recreation took it back over in 2012, so it was before that.
Yeah, I know.
But again, we can ask them.
Sure, absolutely.
I'll support the 4th for the day of.
Day of?
I support the 4th.
I support the 4th.
I support the 4th. The only thing is that I spoke with someone who says that the fireworks are much cheaper after the 4th of July. Is that true?
I can tell you, once they load them up, we bought them, so I don't know. I mean, as long as they stay in their container, I don't know that the prices go down.
Okay.
But I don't know about that.
Do you need holiday?
I can tell you, the attendance seemed to be just the same.
It was the
Again,
same?
July 4th, I think, is the appropriate recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And again, just an FYI, the parade is going to start at 4 o'clock this year. We're going back to the ride on Federal Highway, so...
With the tree lighting.
With the tree lighting.
That's the holiday parade.
For the holiday parade, yes, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
Economic development.
All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. That's it for today. See you tomorrow.